Hello, everybody. Welcome into our latest live broadcast. It's Friday, the 13th of June, 2025. And today we're going to redo a review that went completely sideways on me. That was, well, I'm going to take 75% of the fault here. However, they could have made this a little easier for me. Okay, so basically what ended up happening, there are a couple of steps that that I could have done better. I should have done better, but I have allowed my previous experience to set improper expectations. And so TerraMaster is still improving their software, and I still think it needs a little bit more clarity, and we'll go through that a little bit today. But ultimately, normally when we turn on a network attached storage unit, like a Synology or QNAP or a SUSE or whoever, normally it needs drives to boot from. So if you don't have any drives in the unit, it doesn't do anything. This unit, and in fact every TerraMaster unit I've looked at, has a small flash drive. In this case, it's like a 32 gig SanDisk flash drive that's plugged into a USB port on the motherboard, not on the outside, on the circuitry. And TerraMaster's done this across the board, and I thought it was weird the first time I saw it. But now that we're getting into enterprise level corporate rack mounted backup storage, I thought they would go with a more traditional way, and I didn't. I was wrong. They didn't. And so that's okay. That's their style and that's their approach, and it's just a matter of me getting customized to it, familiar with it. I have a sneeze coming on. I'm trying to fight it. Okay, so anyway, I think it passed. One of the first steps I missed was not putting this little paper backing on the bottom of these drive trays. Everybody else, for the most part, uses plastic drive trays. And I thought, well, that's no big deal, you know, and I left it out. And when I opened this back up, I realized the bottom of the circuit board of the hard drive can hit this metal. It wasn't, but it could. So I don't think I agree with this design. If they wanted to put something on the metal, it should be affixed, like a sticker. Or ideally, don't use metal. I'm not quite sure where they went with metal. I also thought we had to use screws because they include these screws. And so I put 2 screws in these. And the instructions say we should be putting the screws on the bottom. I think there's a place here for like a fast thumb screw or something that can go in there. However, when I took each drive out of its tray to put the little paper, backing on that goes on the other side of this metal bottom, I realized it doesn't need screws at all. And I also saw something that I didn't see before that's also very different than what I'm accustomed to seeing from, again, other NASs. So sometimes experience can get in your way if you're dealing with a similar product but made by a company you're not as familiar with, whose ideals and goals and priorities are different from their competitors, which, duh, why wouldn't you want to be different? Why would you want to match what your competitors are doing unless all you're doing is competing on price? So this TerraMaster unit is far less expensive than competing models of similar features. And with that comes not only just a difference in price, but a difference in the philosophy of the software design and the hardware design. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I'll bring this up to the camera, and I'll show you what I didn't catch the first time. First and foremost, we have 2 LEDs right here sticking out. Right? Right here they are. They're kind of hard to see. You see them now? And one, I guess, is power, and the other one is flashing for any read or write activity. On the bottom, this all being metal, this paper is absolutely needed, but they don't give you any spare paper. So if this tears or wears through, I don't know what you're supposed to do. I mean, I suppose you could just get a couple Post-it notes and stick it down there, but on a unit this fancy, we wouldn't do that in an enterprise business. Now, the screws I put in, I put one here and one on the other side, right here. And they were suggesting in the documentation they should go underneath. Well, that's twice as many screws, right? And I would much rather go into the sides, one each, just to hold it. It's not like it's going to go anywhere anyway, but from the vibrations and everything, I just want it, I want it secured. Well, it turns out it secures anyway. So if I turn this upside down, this drive won't fall out. There's a little tab. I can hold it up right there, right there, and that plastic moves in and out to hold on to the drive. So if I bend this back, just like I would with other competing NAS trays, hard drive trays, and we take another look in there, you can see right inside that little tab, this is that piece of paper I was telling you about. It's very, very thin. It almost feels like tracing paper that's, you know, completely opaque. And I just feel like that should be something permanent on the metal, some melted plastic on top that, you know, coats it, or a rubberized coating, because that paper is not going to last forever. Yeah, and by the way, if they would have just made the whole tray out of plastic, they wouldn't have had this issue. And it's something I've never seen another NAS maker do. So this doesn't mean it's good or it's bad. It's different. And I'm here to show you, you know, ultimately how this is different and whether or not, well, I can't tell you whether or not you should buy one, but I can tell you what to expect and help with the variations. If you're trying to make a decision, who do you pick other than price? Who do you pick? You've got processor power, you've got RAM, you've got NVMe cache on some, and they vary with, you know, network speed, etc. Now, as a reminder, I've got some refurbished Seagate Iron Wolf 22 terabyte drives. You should not use desktop hard drives in these. Generally speaking, they will fail on you much, much sooner. So if you want to, just keep good backups. The NAS drives I've been using, both the Western Digital Reds and Seagate Iron Wolves, I have not yet had a failure since the 3 terabyte drives. Everything since then is rock solid. I haven't seen any bad 8 terabyte drives, no bad 4s, 12s, 16s, 20s, 22s, or 24s. And I'm talking over years. These have not yet failed, neither for myself nor any of my customers. Were all on the original drives we used during the NAS install. So if I doing this all over again, I would not use the screws, as I mentioned. I would just pop these in and the drives into the trays with the paper down, okay? And it does click in there. I don't know if you could hear it, but it's locked in. Now, it's not as secure as a screw, but again, where's it going to go? Now, because Synology, because TerraMaster has their operating system installed on their flash drive, you can boot this without drives. And I do recall a couple of people in our live chat saying, hey, Carey, why don't you take the drives out and try booting it? Because it was trying to boot from a previously configured TerraMaster NAS we reviewed a year and a half earlier, and then the drives just sat on a shelf. And this TerraMaster didn't tell me, hey, it looks like you're trying to read from a bunch of drives you've previously configured on a different TerraMaster, the way Synology would. So that didn't help me. It was still my problem. I still created it, but TerraMaster could have been a bit more helpful. When I tried to sign in and I'm looking for a default account like admin or whatever, there is no default account on a proper first boot up with brand new drives or clean drives that were previously used. It sets that up during the process that we never got to see. And so I was trying to figure out what's the default admin name and password, only to find out that it was whatever I set a year and a half earlier. And again, TerraMaster could have let me know that. Then when we got the wrong account information entered, because I'm trying to go with defaults that don't exist, I'm having trouble looking up the defaults because they don't exist. I was really getting frustrated. And then they would have us go through this capture where it was really hard to see the, you got to type these letters and numbers. And at the end of the video, I highlighted, first of all, I admitted what I did wrong, but I also suggested what they could do better. Because I shouldn't have had to just untangle this whole thing without any help. The software should be guiding me. So anyway, one of the things was that darn CAPTCHA. because I didn't know if I was entering the name and password wrong. Maybe the name is wrong, maybe the password's wrong, or maybe I didn't enter the CAPTCHA code. And when I didn't enter it correctly, or I did, whatever message popped up on the screen came and went, and I didn't have a chance to read it. So they have already addressed that. So there's no more CAPTCHA. And like I said, there are other ways to verify that it's a human, and they immediately changed that. So they did respond with basically a puzzle piece, and you slide the puzzle piece over to the part of the picture where it's missing or where it fits. So much better, so much better. I mean, ultimately, I do believe if TerraMaster followed my suggestions, I would have a very difficult time complaining about this. So the things I'm bringing up are not criticisms, but rather what I would personally like to see for me to really get behind this product. So whether or not they're booting off a flash drive, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's just important to know when you set it up. So because these drives had been previously configured in a RAID 5 array, then when we plugged them all in, and it doesn't matter which one is drive 1 or drive 2, that doesn't matter, it immediately recovered from the array. And if I take one drive out, the array still works because we still have 3 drives. So for this to be treated like a brand new drive, it must be unlinked from the rest of the array. And that can be done in software where you log in and you delete the array. This can be done with a drive dock where I take each drive out of its carriage, pop it into a drive toaster or a USB adapter, or plug it into a computer temporarily just to run the disk clean. But that's going to take some time, and I'd rather not go through that hassle. Or you break the array by simply only leaving 1 or 2 drives in. Then it says, well, this is whatever this is, it's not all there. It's only 25% or 33% there. And it'll treat it like an invalid drive, which is pretty much the same as what an uninitialized brand new drive should do. When most reviewers are reviewing product, they will follow certain steps. But when most consumers get product, or even some businesses' IT departments, they might be upgrading from something, the scenario may be a little different. And so while it was challenging for me to deal with that frustration, you need to know that that's a real life scenario that occurs all the time. And if reviewers are all following the same process, they're not replicating what happens in real life. If you bought brand new drives and a brand new NAS, you won't have the problems I had. But the minute you try and repurpose either your NAS or your drives, that's where the difficulty comes. And well, I had a feeling these drives had never been wiped. I know that the RAID array from a TerraMaster won't work on a Synology or a QNAP, or they don't work together. So it should see the array made by another NAS as foreign and say, well, you know, it's the same as a blank drive. But because the previous array I made was on another TerraMaster, then the best they could do is say, hey, you've already got an array on here from a previous TerraMaster, and it appears TerraMaster is not recording that when they set up the array. Synology does. Synology will tell you what model of Synology you used to make that array. And it's encoded, obviously, on the drive. So when you move the drives to a different model, it pops up and says, hey, these drives were originally set up on a DS918, and now you're on a DS925. Do you want to migrate it over? TerraMaster just boots to it as though the drives have been there the whole time. So that brought up, like, why am I seeing TOS version 5? I thought they were on TOS version 6, because this had TOS version 5 on it. So these are all the mistakes I made. Now, you know, when you're live on camera and you're trying to get it done, I'm not exactly thinking as clearly as I might be if the cameras are off, and I'm just relaxed and scratching my head going, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what, you know, and even that can get frustrating, but not as frustrating as doing it in front of an audience. And you know, these are real world scenarios that I'm intentionally or unintentionally wanting you to be aware of. I'm not purposefully making it hard or more difficult than it needs to be. And I don't think TerraMaster is purposefully making their software more difficult. So what I want to do today, more or less the drives are still configured together. So what we'll do is we'll just plug in one drive. That breaks the array, which effectively makes it no array. Okay, so we'll leave the other 3 drives out. And whoever had that suggestion in the chat room, and I think there were a few of you that suggested that I remove all but one drive. Didn't make any sense to me because you can't do that with other manufacturers' NASs, because other manufacturers' NASs aren't booting off of an internal USB stick. Again, that's not wrong. It's just, it's not what I was expecting. So that is actually a way to work around this, is just simply plug in one drive to break the array. Or if you don't know, if you're like, I've got some used drives, I don't know where they came from, which was my scenario, I could have played it safe had I known and just put one drive in. Once you get the one drive installed, then you don't have to turn the unit off. You can just slide the other drives in. At that point, the software should acknowledge them, and then you can go ahead and configure your array or see the status of the drives without going through all of the confusion I went through. That's why I say I think TerraMaster could have made the steps clearer. Instead of assuming you're only going to use new drives, instead of assuming you would know this will boot without drives, it'll just come up and it'll tell you put a drive in. If we fire this up with no drives in it, on the screen it'll say please at least put in one drive. Okay, and because we didn't even start that way, we started by installing all 4 drives like I would on every other manufacturer. This is different. Is it better? Is it worse? That's for you to decide. It's not wrong. That much I can tell you. They're not breaking any rules here. They're looking at it from a different perspective. Now, all I've done is I've set this back on the counter with an Ethernet cable and our power adapter. That's it. Obviously, I put the paper on the bottom here, and then I ran a couple of tests just to make sure that I had a good plan for today. But for me to like set up the array and initialize it, it has to synchronize the array just like any other NAS. And the bigger your array is, the longer that takes. So with 4 22 terabyte drives, you're looking at about 24 hours of drive synchronization to get the array verified. But you can still use the NAS just like normal while that's happening. But in my case, I had to turn the NAS off and move it aside to do other videos, so that synchronization never finished. And it will pick up where it left off if you interrupt it. However, I was going to reset it anyway, so why leave it running? I also noticed the fans do get loud. I would come in and check on it to see what the progression of the synchronization was. It's pretty slow when you've got drives this large. And it just was getting louder and louder, especially the later at night and the quieter it got around here, the louder this either became or seemed to become. Now, louder rack-mounted equipment, that's normal. We used to have to wear ear protection when we'd walk into a server room. So that's how loud they get. And in fact, if you look at any videos on somebody giving you a tour of a server room, you'll often see people with headphones or earplugs in. It's not that loud, but if you had a rack of these, it would add up, and it would be, if you were, dealing with that frequently, a bit of concern. So I want you to know that that's pretty common on rack-mounted hardware. When we asked them why the adapter is external instead of internal when there's plenty of room, they said they did that for heat dissipation, to keep everything cool. Okay, but every rack-mounted device I've ever used has an internal power supply and does not have heat issues. So what heat issues? What are you doing differently than everybody else that you're having heat issues if you put the power supply in? Is that what you're saying? So that was a little vague and kind of ignores the fact that nobody else that I'm aware of puts an external power supply on a rack-mounted device, only them. Does it make them wrong? Just makes them different. If you have a preference, then you decide. Okay, but that's very unusual. Not a deal breaker. And when I ask why, I'm told to keep the unit cool. So how are all of my other units being kept cool that have power supplies inside? I don't understand. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. So what I'm going to do is just put one drive in here. And then we will, actually, you know what? Let's put no drives. Let's take all the drives out first. And let's turn this on. I'll show you what happens. First of all, we turn this on. And I know I have a power button somewhere. There it is. And it's not loud at first. We do get beeps, and the whole reset process on this is different too. If we wanted to use a little paper clip or something, put it in the hole. You basically, and by the way, the instructions don't match what happens, but the unit has to be off. You insert the paper clip into the reset, depress the micro switch, you'll feel it, turn the unit on. Remember, the reset is in the back, and in the instructions say wait till the light flashes. It could be 15 to 25 seconds. That's a long time to be holding in a reset button, and you can't do it when the unit's on. You put the reset button in, then turn the unit on, then it'll beep. We'll then keep holding it. Now, this light never flashed the way that the documentation said it would. Instead, I heard the whole unit, while I was holding the reset button in, I heard the whole unit power down and then come back up again. Still never saw any light flashing. Then I removed the reset switch. That was a good solid 25 seconds I held that in. That is a very long time. All the reset switch does is reset the login. It does not reset the drive. So if you forgot your password, something like that, you could do that pretty much on every NAS on the market and reset up your login and still keep all your data in your RAID array intact. So in my case, Kip, by booting to an older RAID array, that would not have helped me. I mean, I could have logged in, and then, once I logged in and I've got TOS 5 instead of 6, I could start putting things together. But again, I think TerraMaster could improve their software. And there'll be some other improvements that you and I will witness together that I think are would be beneficial to make the software better, but we'll see if you agree. I just got 3 beeps here, and that suggests to me that it's ready for something. I have no idea what. The way we access this is we go to the web, the IP address. We access it through our browser the same way you would access your router when you're configuring your router. And there is a piece of software you can download called the TNAS PC app, which is the discovery software that'll look across your network and find any TNAS devices, any TerraMaster devices. And if you have 10 of these or whatever. We just have the one. And so how do we find it? And that's what the TNAS PC app is for. Now, there are other ways. We can do an ARP command and look through all our assigned IP addresses. If you've got a big network, this is not ideal. But the way they intend for you to find it is to download and use the PC app, or the Android app, or the iOS app, or the Mac app. I think they even have a Linux one. So it's just an app that runs in your operating system. It's a pretty small little app. And you would go to TerraMaster support. Say you've got a 4-bay NAS. It'll say which model. Select the model, and all your support documents will be there. Any sort of updates, documentation, sorted by model. All right, so I don't know if I've left the TNAS app installed on here. I think I might have. So if we can just skip that and go right to the TNAS app without having to download and install it. I did not check this. Yes. So it's called TNAS PC. And it immediately finds it. And by the way, the window capture here, if I change my properties to grab that screen, this is what the TNAS PC app looks like. It's looking across my network, and it's just looking for TerraMaster devices, anything TerraMaster. So what we've got is the TNAS app, and this is the IP address, this 192.168.68.66. That's what we're going to use to log in and configure the NAS and set up our drives. And it does say it's uninitialized. That's what we should have been seeing before. And all I have to do is double click on this, and it should open the browser. Let me just verify if the browser's opened over here. Oh, it probably helps if I'm not clicking on OBS, but if I'm actually clicking on the open window. I only have 3 copies of this running, so forgive me if I make a mistake there. So the next screen that we get, let me put that one up. Opens in our browser, and you'll see we're at the top of the page, we're at 192.168.68.66. All this other stuff autofills. You don't type that in. It says TNAS initialization, no disk detected, please install disks and try again. So what I will do, if I come back over here, and we'll put back on camera 1, I'm simply going to take one of these drives, And again, if these were brand new, if these were completely erased, had no previous information on them, I could put all 4 in. But universally, regardless of the status of the drive, you can still do one at a time, lock that in, and you'll see I do that while this is on. I do not have to power it off. Then we go back to that screen, that initialization screen, and see if it updates. But it's got to take a minute for the drive to spin up and communicate with the motherboard and the software. I'm not sure if this auto refreshes, but let's find out together. So it's saying, you know, the same screen here. Please install disks and try again. And look at that. It says the screen has changed. Your TNAS has not been initialized. Please follow the prompts to initialize your TNAS. Only one LAN port can be connected during initialization, but you must connect it. Please keep your TNAS connected to the internet. Otherwise, you cannot install the operating system online. So in other words, it's going to go download the operating system, just like all the other NAS devices I'm accustomed to. You will need to download the TOS installation package from TerraMaster's official website and install it manually if you don't have an internet connection. Now, it does warn you that using incompatible or suboptimal disks can greatly increase the risk of slow NAS response, disk failure, system crashes, or even array collapses. In extreme cases, you may face severe consequences, including the loss of all data. To ensure data security and system stability, it is strongly recommended to choose disks only from the officially recommended compatibility list. Now, I don't know if these drives are on the compatibility list or not. You can click on the link, it'll take you to their website, and we have Seagate, and I'm not sure what order these are in. This looks like NVMe drives. Yeah, these are NVMe. Hard drives for NAS, that's what we're interested in. We have an Iron Wolf 22 terabyte, and we are on the recommended list right here. Okay, so it's up to you if you want to take a chance by using drives that are not verified. On the other hand, or not approved by TerraMaster, Synology is now taking the approach that they won't even let you use the NAS, instead of giving you the option to decide what risks you want to take. And I imagine the reason for that is probably they're tired of getting support calls from people who are being warned and they're saying, I don't care, and then they forget that they ever were warned, and when bad things happen, they blame Synology when Synology says, we warned you, and they say, no, you didn't. That's what I think is happening. But Synology so far is the only one that's doing that with their latest models, and I appreciate that TerraMaster is still allowing the end user to make their own decision and not treat all end users like morons, even if many of them are. We all are not. So with that, we just hit the start button here. And now look, it says the system will automatically initialize your TNAS device by default. If you wish to customize the system disk, system storage pool, system restore, or use a solid state drive to create a cache, please click the custom installation button below before the countdown ends to manually initialize the device. Okay, it wants me to click the custom installation button. Do you see a custom installation button? Is it just me? I see escape. Actually, if you don't know what ESC is, this should say cancel. And this says begin now. What does escape do if I hit escape? Oh, okay. So the documentation right there on the setup is wrong. It doesn't actually reflect what's on the screen. It's telling me to look on the screen for a button that's not there, and there's a button there that they're not explaining, and it's not using normal wording. So instead of ESC, it should say custom. And here we can go back to where we were, which was the automatic online download. Or if you're more of a control freak and you want to manually upload, or you want to use a different operating system like Unraid or TrueNAS, etc., then you would choose the other option. So we're going to follow through with the default, hit next, and now it's installing the operating system onto that one drive that we've installed. And we can just let this go. It'll take a couple minutes to download and install. If we had multiple drives installed, it'll ask us, which disk do you want to have the installation? Now look, it really doesn't matter. It says system will be installed on the selected disk. Up to 2 disks are allowed. I'm not too worried about, I'm not sure why they would allow 2 disks. Like, if this is, if only one drive is put into the NAS, well, these are 20 terabytes or 22 terabytes? These are 22, so what does it say 20? Oh, that's the math. Okay, that's fine. That's a little confusing because they're calculating out gigabytes instead of gigabytes, and that's not reflecting the size drive. You can see it says 2200 right here and 20 over here. I think TerraMaster should fix this. This is an inaccurate calculation, in my opinion. It's valid. What they're saying isn't wrong. It's just really confusing. A lot of people will say, where's my other 2 terabytes? It's just the division is done by 8 or instead of by 10, and it gets you to a different number. Anyway, this could be clearer. You know, it could say drive actual size versus drive calculated size. Something, if they, you know, provide both numbers, I don't know, that's just going to lead to confusion. Customer buys a 22 terabyte drive, I want to see a 22 terabyte drive. But why would it allow up to 2 disks? Does that mean if this drive fails in the future, this unit won't boot anymore? Because I thought that's what the RAID's supposed to take care of. I don't know. This is confusing. What is the benefit of putting it up to 2 disks? And doesn't that automatically recover from the RAID array that we create later? Or is this assuming these are the only drives we're using and will ever use? Because you can run this off 2 drives indefinitely. Or 1 drive. It just kind of defeats the point of having it. We could buy a unit for a lot less money if that's all we need. So I'm not sure about this. Again, I feel like the software could be a little better, a little more polished, to not leave all these open-ended questions that are not completely explained. So anyway, I'm going to just hit next. Online download, yeah, the TOS package, that's the TerraMaster operating system package, next. And that's why you need the internet connection, right? So when I hit next, now it starts to partition that drive. And by the way, you're going to lose everything on the drive. It'd be nice if they'd have warned you of that too, just as a boilerplate, without even looking at the condition. If the drive is new or used, just say, hey, following this is going to erase the drive. Are you okay with that? That should be a standard thing that they go through in their setup, just like their competitors do. I would recommend TerraMaster buy one of their competitors' drives, not read the documentation, and try to get the drive, the NAS with drives configured, just like I did, and compare it to the way they do it, the way TerraMaster does it, and see where they can improve their software from their own perspective by comparison. They don't need to duplicate what the competitors are doing, but they need to make the process much clearer in the way that their competitors do, in my opinion. Now, it does say down here, the system will be ready in 10 minutes. If the installation is stuck and the process cannot be completed, your disks may be faulty, the hard drives themselves. Please replace the hard drives and try again. That's an interesting scenario here because they're offering you one condition and one solution. Oftentimes, a condition can be caused by 10 different potential solutions. And especially whether or not your drive passed the compatibility or is on the compatibility list. There's no compatibility check, as far as I know. And why is this popping up unnecessarily? They're trying to avoid support calls, right? So a lot of people, where this gets stuck, it'll get stuck for 9 other reasons. They'll end up replacing their drive for no reason, and then they contact support. But for the other people who contact support that follow the instruction to replace the drive, it'll fix it for them, thereby not needing to call support. Companies do not like providing support. If you had to pay every time you needed support, they would love it. But every time you call support, it costs them money. Every single time. I want you to bear that in mind. Some companies have removed support altogether. HP even went as so far as to put people on an additional 15-minute hold, even if there were operators standing by, to encourage you to give up and try and figure it out yourself. It doesn't cost HP any money to put you on hold. It does cost the money for the phone lines that you're calling. But they retracted that as soon as it went public. They don't do that anymore. All right, let's see. We're at a 5-minute countdown here. It says TNAS rebooting. Please wait. After restarting, the system will automatically reload. If it does not, please search and reconnect to your TNAS, again using the TNAS PC, because your IP address might have changed, is basically what they're telling you. So how are you going to find it again? So that's, you know, when you use TNAS, you're probably going to use it fairly infrequently, but it's something you may not want to have to install it and then uninstall it because you don't like extra stuff on your computer. I did that to myself, where I took it out and I had to find it and download it and reinstall it again because I was trying to keep my PC clean. I'm like, wait, I need this again. And when you need it, it'll always be unexpected. Like I should have known I was going to need it to reinitialize the device, and I just forgot I removed it. And then relocating it again and finding TerraMaster's support site, you know, it's just a Google search away, but it's not like it's super easy to find. You got to answer some questions and then eventually get to the download. Again, it's not wrong. It's just a different approach that TerraMaster's taking to distributing the software. Now, that being said, the same is true with other makers like QNAP and Synology and ASUS Store. They all have their little apps for locating their devices. Thank goodness they do. And they're relatively small apps. They don't really take up much resources, and they're not going to run in the background. Like, you have to start it. So I would recommend, if you've got a NAS from any manufacturer, you leave that software on your desktop or your laptop, whatever you're using, so you can always find the IP address that is subject to change. Unless you're a real technical person, you set a static IP address or reserved it on your router, and then maybe you put a label on it or something so you know what it is. Either way, for the average user, I think it's best to just leave it as much a default as possible, because if somebody else takes over for your responsibilities and you have a certain way to do things that is not the default, how are they supposed to know that? You just made life miserable for the next person, and much more difficult than it needed to be. And you're allowed to do that. I disagree with it because it basically locks you in to a configuration that somebody else is likely going to have to undo. Right? It's your personal preference. It's like you like a lot of extra ketchup, and so you put that all over the food that you're serving to other people. It's okay for you to do it for you, but what about everybody else? Maybe they didn't want that, and you took that choice away from them. In all likelihood, you will live a lot longer than this NAS device will be viable, in the sense that it'll be replaced, not because it's broken, but because there'll be new drive technologies, or there'll be new network technologies, or there'll be more storage capacities that a new one would be ideal, and they'll just eventually retire this one. So when this one gets retired, if it ever gets reused, essentially either you or somebody else has to go through and wipe that manual static configuration out, even if it's not even sold, even if it's simply just going to be put somewhere else in the same company where they don't have to worry about losing, wiping the data. It can make the configuration very difficult, because now something else may be using that IP address, or you can't get to it because of what you did by reserving it in the router. Now you've got to find the router login and password and find it and remove it. Again, you have every right to make these decisions, and as long as you're the one held accountable and responsible, you're the one suffering the consequences. But if I have to suffer because of what you did, then I'm not too happy about it. All right, we're just counting down here. We're at what, another 50 seconds. I'm keeping it on the screen because I want you guys to see in real time how long this takes and what it's going to look like, and what the initial setup was supposed to look like had we used brand new or erased drives the way I was supposed to. And it wasn't obvious to me why any of this was happening. Nothing from TerraMaster told me potentially what was happening. It just loaded it up like I was still on the previous model of NAS from a year and a half ago, acting like, there you go, like I've had this for a year and a half. There's no sort of acknowledgement from TerraMaster that we booted from a previous TerraMaster. And again, other manufacturers do say, hey, look, we want you to know you move these drives. And by the way, did you do that on purpose? And is it that you want to move these drives to a new NAS? And would you like to save your configuration? And that only works within manufacturers. I can't take it from one manufacturer to another. But because this came out of a TerraMaster, these drives, and then they went into another TerraMaster, it created a logic loop. And I wasn't ready for that because I'm not accustomed to that being restricted or not made. It's not being inspected, basically, where I'm used to the inspection happening by the NAS. So again, it's not wrong. Just for whatever reason, TerraMaster doesn't do it that way. So I make a suggestion. You should start doing it that way. It would have been very helpful. It would have resulted in a much faster resolution. Okay, end user license agreement. That's standard boilerplate stuff here. I read and will abide by all the terms, and I do suggest, if that is important to you, that you read it. Now you see why there's no default admin or login. It doesn't exist. In fact, TerraMaster doesn't use the word admin. They use the word super user. What is a super user and how does it vary from an admin? It's exactly the same thing using a different word. Okay. Why? I don't know. Is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just a different way of looking at it. I am accustomed to this account being called admin from everybody else. Every other NAS manufacturer. I've never seen the word super user in relation to the admin account on a network attached storage. It's not wrong. It's different. So what I'm telling you is my previous experience is actually making this more difficult for me. If I had never used a NAS before, I wouldn't know this wasn't normal and I wouldn't have had expectations. Or the expectations I had would have been different. So here it says to increase system security, the root user has been disabled. Well, is the root user the admin account or the super user account? Okay. Let's keep going. You're about to create a super user for the system, which is equivalent to the root user. Okay, wait, so the super user is the same as the root user? So what's the difference between them if they're equivalent? Why did we even bring that up? And they still don't use the word admin, which is the more ubiquitous term when used to who can control and configure the device, who has God mode, the admin. That makes them not just a user, but a super user, or in the world of Linux, the root. Oh my gosh. Okay. We strongly recommend you do not use super user in your daily operations and create a different user for service settings, application management, data backup. Well, you know, duh. Take a breath. Okay. It wants to know what we want to call this. So TNAS is fine. We can leave that. If we want to search the network, we can do a ping TNAS if we want to find it without using the PC app. We have to create a username, and these usernames, they have to be between 3 and 128 characters. Can you imagine a username that's 128 characters? Just kill me now. Now, if I want to put my username of Carey in there, will it let me? Let's hope so. I don't know. So for a password, you have to have a password no less than 8 characters long, and it must contain numbers, lowercase and uppercase. It must have all of that. Seriously? Seriously. So I need at least 1 uppercase. I need at least 1 lowercase. I need at least 1 number, and I have no less than 8 characters. I mean, these rules are holy moly. Okay, so I'm going to put a password in here. And what I recommend you do is maybe start it off with a capital letter. Use a number 1 instead of the letter I. Use the number 5 instead of the letter S, etc. Be creative, whatever makes sense to you. And just for added security, throw an exclamation point at the end. So what we end up with looks this long, which, whoops, let me start again. So what have I typed? Can we look at it? This is my password. Capital T, everything else lowercase until we get to these S's. You notice I'm not consistent here. I'm not making all S's 5s. And this is an example of using a passphrase instead of just a password, phrase meaning a number of words. And we've got the, even though it says that we don't have to put a special character, I mean, why not? I'm surprised they haven't said you need at least one special character too. It's a little overkill, but that's fine. Better safe than sorry. And then we have to retype that again. This is my PA55WORD exclamation point. And then you see it's still highlighted in red. That suggests to me that these aren't matching. So again, the interface is a little weird, but I'm going to ignore that and hit next. Now it says we need to set up a security email. So if we should forget our password, it will email it to us. So I can put my email address in. So we'll just put, I'll put my Gmail in here. And then it says we're going to send you a code to verify you've put the right email address in. And I don't want to go through that right now. So first of all, you'll notice, you know, I have to hit send code. I'm getting a do not enter kind of symbol here on that field. If I want to skip the verification code, I still can't skip the security email. Whether or not you want to verify the email is up to you. I thought this was a little confusing because when I was trying to click on this to avoid, if I take my email address out and then I try and skip verification, it will not let me. And this box highlights in red, signifying either there's a problem with this box or this is the box you've selected. I feel like they should be using two different colors for this. Again, when you've selected the box, you've got a blinking cursor. You don't need to have this highlighted in red. You just go where the blinking cursor is. If there's a problem, like, hey, you need to fill this field or these fields don't match, then any box that has an issue should be highlighted in red. These are just the way that I'm accustomed to seeing it from previous experience in other software. And we know TerraMaster is still a young company, so we give them a pass on this. But I'd like to see them clarify what these colors do and how we're defining an error in the field or a missing field versus a selected in focus field. Again, with a selected in focus field, the cursor will blink. You don't need to draw attention to that. Or if you do, choose a different color or just a different way to highlight it. Now that I've put an email address in, without confirming that email address, you know, that I've typed it correctly, I can skip the verification and that will work now. Maybe I have to click it twice. There we go. So again, that's not clear either. Why did I have to click it twice? It says the storage pool and volume have never been created and the storage function of this device cannot be used. Would you like to create it now? If we want to create it now with OneDrive, we can. But who would set this up with OneDrive? I want to put the other drives in, so let's just cancel for right now. And now it's going to go through their security advisor, and it's going to tell us, you know, your password strength is normal, your account automatic block is normal, username normal, file system snapshot, which is a form of internal backup. And then it brings up to the top of this list when it's done, things that they feel are in risk. I'm not worried about any of this yet because I still haven't configured the array, but you know, when we're all said and done and we want to sort of put the icing on the cake, you might come back and see if you've left anything insecure just to verify you did everything right. Now this leopard or whatever this thing is, this cat, this is what your desktop of the NAS looks like in your browser. And up at the top, we've got a bunch of icons, and that's going to bring up all the submenus. Over to the right, we also have some icons here. This is pretty normal on every NAS that's, you know, GUI based. And bringing up the TerraMaster looking logo here that they say start shows us any installed applications. This is a brand new NAS without anywhere to install applications because we've not yet configured the array. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come back over to camera 1. Remember me? I've been gone for a while. We can go ahead and start plugging all the other drives in safely without turning the unit off. So we can put this one here. Put this one here. Put this one here. Now, I've never had to set up a NAS like this before. It doesn't make it wrong. Okay, I want to keep emphasizing what I'm accustomed to. I have considered to be standards. And TerraMaster is changing the standards, but no one ever said they had to follow some predefined standard. This is acceptable. If I was installing TerraMasters left and right, I wouldn't even think about it. I would consider this normal, right? So my lack of familiarity with their process is not their fault. It's not like they're doing it differently from model to model. They're doing it exactly the same, but it's very different from how generally the competitors' processes are more or less the same, or at least different. The one that's not like the others is TerraMaster, but maybe that's done on purpose. Maybe they're like, hey, we don't want to be like anybody else. I don't know. Or maybe it's a lack of experience in the industry where the others have been around longer and they polish their stuff a bit more. I don't know. But once I'm familiar with the process and I execute that correctly, I will get the same end result that I'm going after. Let me take a quick look in the chat to see if you have any questions. And in the meantime, I'm giving the drives just a few seconds or couple minutes just to initialize. They're probably already initialized, but it's not like I can wait too long, all right? So for just a moment, let me just look in the chat and see if there's any questions or comments that I have missed here. Samuel Kowalski with a $1.99 super chat says, hello, Carey. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you, Samuel. Back at you, my friend. Ron Barnish and Mark Baggett, Eddie Casanova, Matt and Mark Gaines all say hello. I see Dustin Fuller and 3D Everything, Ben Laird and Mark Baggett saying hello. Terry says hello. Alan with a Y joins us along with Andy W6AD. Saying hello from San Diego County. Craig Wilson says good afternoon. There's Doman 2000 and Gil Garcia saying hello, along with Thomas MacT and Sean Skinner. Paul Howe says hello. And Rick Lakes joins us along with Steve Chappelle and Zub-Zero. I also see, did I say Patrick T already? Dazzle555 says hello. Richard DeFries. Retro Cyber. I also see Alex Sasso saying hello. Of course, Mara, our channel administrator, looking over everybody and making sure that we don't have any people seeking attention with no regard for anybody else, and I appreciate that. Kindness will get you so much further in the world and certainly here, and will be far more rewarding for both of us. Just show some respect, and we are more than happy to return that respect. Mortant joins us and renews membership, now a member for 37 months. He says hello, happy Friday, and happy Father's Day. Right back at you, my friend. I also see in our chat room, scrolling, Essential Working Too Hard says hello. Luke Greenia says hello. Scott says hello. Ghostly Lurker says hello. Jim KJ3N joins us and says hello. Bill Stodd joins us. Alvin Shaver. David Herzog. Greg M. Greg M. wondering if there's any mention of binding arbitration in that terms of service. No idea. I've never really had any issue with any terms of service in the history of my working in this industry for any piece of software ever in the existence of my career. I see a lot of people making a big deal about wording and things that have never had any practical litigation or concern other than their imagination. So I don't really worry about it because there's no precedent set for me to try and nip something in the bud or prevent something from happening that's never before happened, and therefore no indication of any reasonable usage of my time and effort of research for an issue that simply has never existed before. So the terms of service are public. You can read about them if it's of concern to you, and I don't know if you're kidding about it, but there are some people that are very concerned about terms of service. And yet again, I am not aware of any terms of service litigation regarding PC software. Only about the potential. Like I've seen some wording go to court from, say, a consumer-based advocacy group, but not based on anything that ever really happened. But if you know of a story and you want to share it with us in email, send us an email with it and we'll read the article. And I'd also be curious how many years ago that was. So anyway, I don't worry too much about that. Frank Jimmy joins us and says hello. Welcome in, Frank. And there's Regis Gaming saying hello. And Elijah 52 Dickens. Raj D says hello. Welcome in, everybody. Raj D also renews membership. Now a member for 26 months. Thank you, Raj. All right, now this has been sitting far longer than it needs to. So I wanted to take a minute to talk to you guys. Now I'm going to focus back on this. All right. And I did not need to wait that long. I just want you to know. These were probably ready within 90 seconds of my installing them. Let's go back over to our window capture, which means I need to go back to my TOS screen here. Did I put it? Right there. So when you look at this, I need you to focus up here to identify that we're on a website. And the website is being hosted by the NAS. So unless we turn on outside access, the only way you can get to this website is if you're on my network. Now, if you want to open that up for external remote access, you also open up your potential for hacking. No matter how you secure it, you got to stay on top of security as security needs change. And updating your operating system when updates come out is critical. My preference would be to log into a computer at the office or where this NAS is located to get onto their local network. And from that computer I'm remoted into in the office, I would use their local network to do any maintenance. I find this to be way more secure, but the choice is yours. And you can do this across the board with your router, your NAS, whatever, no matter who makes it. We're going to go back up to the start button here. No, that's not what I want. I want the cog wheel, the gear. Close this. By the way, just like a start button on Windows, you'll see we have a reboot option, we have a shutdown option, and then we have a logout option. So, just so you know. You're going to find the control panel looks a lot like the competitor's control panel, where you've got privileges, network services, storage manager options, general settings, and system info. So general settings, like if we go to system, there may be, I don't know, is there update options in here? Tells us our current TOS version is 6.0.694. Our BIOS or init boot version is 5.26. I want to check this box, which I feel should be checked automatically. This should be the default. People turn this on and they forget about it. It goes by for years. They have a problem. They call somebody like me to come look at it, and I see they've been missing updates for years. And that is probably what's caused their problem. So to be preventive, to act in a more proactive way, I feel like you should have to disable this. However, they have their reasons. Maybe they don't want to potentially break somebody's config and then they get a support call cursing them out. So on the other, one way or the other, you're screwed if you're a TerraMaster. People will be upset that they didn't get updates because they didn't know. And people will be upset because they did get updates because they didn't know. But my preference, I'd like to see better safe than sorry on this one. And the option when we check it is to automatically check for available updates once a day and download the update. Now, it'd be nice if I could select a time, like have it do it when the business is closed, but whatever. Then, of course, we can manually update if we want to go to the website and download. We have that option. Now, it does say in case of the failure of the online update to do it manually. Before updating, please download the latest software package from TerraMaster. Well, obviously, you wouldn't want to update it with it. That wouldn't be an update, that would be a down date.
The update process is expected to take about 10 minutes. Do not operate, power off, or reboot the NAS when it's being updated. Well, just like a BIOS update. We can hit the check for updates now just to make sure. No update available appears and then disappears without me confirming I've read it. TerraMaster needs to stop this behavior. It's driving me up the wall. I don't know where that's going to appear. When I click check for updates, does it tell me the results over here, down here, by the button? Where is it? Did you catch it? I'm going to do it again. Where is it? Hurry up. You ready? Blink. It's gone. Did you see it? There needs to be user confirmation of any message that appears on the screen. Give the user an opportunity to locate where that message is, get it into focus, read it, maybe read it 2 or 3 times, maybe even take a picture of it with their phone so they can send it to the tech to explain what's going on. Can you imagine? I want you to take a picture of this with your phone, and now, you could obviously do that very easily watching a video that you can rewind, but in real life, I haven't figured out how to do that. We go over here to configuration. Changes have not been saved. Oh yeah, we want to save the changes here. Once we get everything set up, let's say we do a lot of customization, we can back that configuration up so we don't have to go through all these options. And then of course reset it back to factory defaults is great, assuming you can log in to get to that. Otherwise, that's what the reset button's for. Now, when we come down to creating our storage, right? Because what it's saying is the storage. Now look, this message is staying here. Thank goodness. All messages, even this is okay, where I have to close it in order to get it off the screen. That ensures I have time to read it or reread it as needed to understand it, and to acknowledge that by closing that window or clicking an OK button. It says it failed to update because we don't have enough space on our volume. So what that tells me is we really need to create our array first. Then we can come in and do this. So the order of events, because of the way TerraMaster has set this up, once again, it's different than what I'm accustomed to. And once again, that doesn't make it wrong. It does mean that my experience is kind of hurting me or it's hindering me because I'm kind of, I'm going through a process that is so familiar to me. I do it all the time. And TerraMaster says, well, we don't do that. Okay, fair enough. So let's go to the storage area. And under here, we have something called Storage Manager. And you can click on any of these if you want information. So for example, did it recognize all the disks? We can look here and see. It sees 4 disks. It tells us the status of those drives with the little green dots, and it tells you what the dots mean. If there's a yellow dot, a red dot, or if the dot is gray, which is very similar to the color of the background, which I don't agree with, what does that mean? And then there's also room to install 2 M.2 drives for caching. I would not use large or fast M.2 drives. If you had a couple of older M.2 NVMe drives laying around, like 256 gigs or smaller, this would be an ideal place to use them. Not that you can't use larger drives, but you're just wasting money. If they're just sitting around doing nothing anyway and you've already paid for them, well, you feel free to use them. But if you want to intentionally open up your inventory to what could work in here, smaller is likely all you need. 64 gigs is probably plenty. 256 is probably over the top. And then you can add 2 of them, so you can have a RAID array in these as well. In some cases, you can even add these drives to these drives and make your array bigger. I wouldn't. These are really intended for caching, and I'm not even sure if that's an option. When we go up to the top, you'll see we've got tabs such as the disk information. Again, this is another way to identify which disk is our system disk. Not that it matters if it's drive 1, 2, 3, or 4. Our smart info, our self-monitoring and reporting technology to let you know if your drive is failing. There's a log, right? When did we plug it in? Date and time. And then the Iron Wolf, which is specific to Seagate, has its own health management that is apparently coded into TerraMaster's software. That's nice. With the drop-down box, you can see we've got this temperature, vibration, and shock. This is often the vibration and shock that kills desktop drives, why they don't last as long in a NAS. You're wondering what's the difference? Is it just the price and the label? No, it is not. And if you don't believe me, well, ask me how I know. I was using desktop drives. I thought, well, why am I going to pay extra for NAS drives? And after I kept replacing the failing drives, started wondering if having a NAS was worth it. Well, if you're not going to follow the recommendations, they're not there to squeeze money out of your wallet. They're there to make sure you have the best experience possible. The company wants you to come back and buy more. So if you, look, let me go back to camera one for a second. Let's talk about this. Just because a company recommends something doesn't mean you have to use it. And if you don't use it, then they're saying we can't guarantee you're going to have the experience, the best experience possible. In some cases, such as you buy a printer, and the printer manufacturer says you really need to use our ink and you really need to use our paper if you want the best reliability, if you want the best printout quality, you will buy our ink and our paper. Now, many of you do not do that. I think most people don't. And I have very rarely ever heard a customer complain that when they print out on different paper, it's not acceptable. Maybe with photos, but just printouts, even if they're in color, I've never, not once in my life, heard a customer complain about the paper. When you use alternative inks, that can cause problems for sure. The sky is the limit with regards to the kind of problems you can have. But at the same time, most customers are not using the printer manufacturer's ink. So then the printer manufacturers started subscription models where they're just going to send you the ink and you don't have to worry about it. You just keep paying them. They want that recurring revenue. And they want you to have a good experience and not have to call support over a printer problem you caused because you bought some cheap ink that clogged up the print heads and now you've ruined the printer, or it'll cost more to fix than replace it. And more than likely the user will blame the printer manufacturer, even though the printer manufacturer said, we warned you. On the other hand, a lot of people do buy third-party ink and never have any problem at all. The question is, who's accepting the blame? So TerraMaster's telling you, you should use NAS drives to have the best experience. And if you use desktop drives, and if you just keep having failing drives and lost data, it's not on us. It's on the screen. We can prove that it's there, and we can prove you had to acknowledge that. So you cannot hold us accountable. No matter how angry you are at us, you did it to yourself. This is what the world has come to now. Almost every company universally has to warn users that if you don't follow our recommended settings, you are not going to get the best reliability, performance, etc. Security, including the updates. If you decide that you know better than us, then your consequences are no longer ours. Okay, that's fair deal. They're not taking responsibility for you not listening, nor would I. Now, let's go back over and see what we can do to continue our RAID array build here. So let me go back over to the window capture. And we're going to go to what, volume maybe? Is it okay, so first option, volume. We have no volumes. So even though these drives did have data on them, because we started with one and reinitialized the one, it broke the other three RAID link on it, which is what I wanted. Or if these drives were brand new out of the box, this would look exactly the same. There is a small little information icon here that you can read about with regards to familiarizing yourself with a RAID array and what it can do. I'm going to simply go with create, and we can create a volume on an existing storage pool, which I do not want to do. We're going to create a volume on a new storage pool. So there would obviously be no existing storage pool on a brand new drive, and I'm trying to pretend like these are brand new drives and treat them like they're brand new. So yes, create a volume on a new storage pool. Notes, in order to use your disk storage space, you need to create volumes. And then within those volumes, you create shared folders. That's like any other NAS. Volumes need to be created on storage pools. So you need to create a storage pool before creating a storage volume. Please ensure that you have created a storage pool. Well, we have not created a storage pool.
So what is it going to do next? Interesting. It's wanting to create a volume, and I'm not quite sure if this is somehow linked these drives together by default. So, in my opinion, storage pool should be the first option. They're clearly not alphabetized, so I don't know why they were put in this order. And if you scroll down, you'll see there's a lot more stuff here. Once you create the storage pool, then probably you'll be going into storage volume options from that point forward for the entirety of the NAS experience. So maybe that's why it's on top. But I do feel like storage pool should be first. So what is a storage pool? The storage pool is defining how we want to use these drives. Do we want to use them all together? Do we want to separate them into separate pools? Do I want 2 drives in mirror configuration and 2 drives in a stripe configuration? Then I'm going to create 2 pools. If I want to use all 4 drives and I want them all to sync up together, then I want to use a single storage pool. So watch, when I click create, it's going to tell us create storage pool, and it's defaulting here. Oh, maybe that's what came up on the volume. Maybe it brought us, no, I'm not sure. Is that what we saw? Let me go back to volume and hit create. No, it just says create volume. Okay, then does it bring up the storage pool? No, but this looks exactly the same as the storage pool setup screen. I am confused about this because it looks exactly like the other screen, but why are the words different up here if this would imply this is something different? I think this is something that could use a little polishing, because I believe what this is the storage pool setup, not the volume setup. Because I'm not certain of that, I'm going to click on storage pool. I don't want to find out. I'm going to hit create, and it's the same exact screen, only now it says create storage pool. All right, trade. What's trade? It's T-RAID. Thank you very much. That's TerraMaster's redundant array of independent disks. So while a RAID is a standard across the industry for decades, T-RAID is TerraMaster's option that improves that standard that's been around. Because it's been around, you know, technology's improved since then. So if you want to use the old-fashioned RAID, there's usually an option to just go back to RAID 0, 1, or 5 to the industry standards that are, let's face it, they're out of date. If you want to take advantage, full advantage of the latest technology in your new NAS, whether it's Synology or QNAP or TerraMaster, etc., they often have their own much more optimized, much more efficient, much more reliable definition of RAID. And it'll usually be something with the word RAID in it with the company's name. So here, T-RAID, and we have T-RAID Plus. The JBOD means just a bunch of disks. It's really all it means. I know it seems hard to believe, but that's what it stands for. And it means that you're just going to put a bunch of different drives. They're completely random laying around, and you don't care. This means this should be called I don't care, meaning that you don't care about system reliability, you don't care about system stability. You're just going to take whatever laying around and slap it in there. That's sloppy. I'm not sure I agree with this. However, it's your choice. And your choice is your consequences, not mine. So T-RAID and T-RAID Plus. So what is T-RAID? We click on that and it tells us TerraMaster T-RAID provides users with an optimized, flexible, and elastic disk array management solution. And I've got a smart calculator to understand how much space you will be losing for that redundancy. And it kind of goes through T-RAID 5 plus T-RAID, which is RAID 5 plus RAID 1 together. I don't know if they explain. Yeah, they say the drives can be different capacities, and here's how much wasted space you'll have, here's how much redundancy you'll have. That's like an alternative to just a bunch of disks. And you can read all through this. We could be here a while. Different combinations. So my question is, what's T-RAID Plus? Well, I would think T-RAID Plus is even better, right? So since TOS 5, the previous version of the operating system, we've garnered array for flexibility, blah, blah, blah.
With TOS 6, they unveiled T-RAID Plus, so that explains why I haven't seen it before, which is just a better version offering more data security. Well, why wouldn't I want that? Isn't that weird? It's not defaulting to T-RAID Plus. If I was TerraMaster, T-RAID Plus would be how I would define it. Oh, I lost half my storage space. Wow. So it's giving me 44 terabytes of usable space and 44 terabytes of redundancy, meaning this is more like a mirrored array. I don't want to lose two $300 drives. If I have 4 drives that cost $300 a piece, and you're telling me I can only use the capacity of 2 of them at 22 terabytes a piece. This adds even more confusion when it told us those drives were 20 terabytes on one screen, but then says together they're 44. Wait a minute, if they're 20, how do they add up to 44? They'd add up to 40. That's because the report of 20 was using a different calculation. Instead of gigabytes, they're using gigabytes, and it's resulting in a smaller number on one screen and a larger number on the other screen. I think they need to pick a lane or offer both numbers. So I don't mind losing 1 drive for redundancy. That's how RAID 5 works. If I have 4 drives and those 4 drives are 22 terabytes, we lose 1 drive, no matter what size it is. If they're all the same size, 1 drive is, think of it as a spare. But it's not just a single drive that's a spare. Any of the 4 can be the spare at any time. Any random drive of the 4 can go out and the other 3 pick up the slack. But the equivalent of lost redundancy, lost space that you can't use, is split out equally 25% to each drive until it totals the space of one capacity, the drive capacity of 1 drive. You follow that? So I understand now why they went to T-RAID as the default, because that's a standard RAID 5. 3 of our 22 terabyte drives, or the capacity of 3 of them, with the redundancy of the capacity of 1 of them, but it's not literal. We're using all 4 drives. No single drive is a spare. All 4 can become the spare because all 4 contain 1/4 of the other 3, including itself. That's how I got to 1/4. Okay, you might have to replay that a few times to get it. But it's really, you've got to conceptualize in your head that we don't just have a spare drive. With a RAID 5, any drive can be the spare drive at any time. Because you can't know which one's going to fail. What if it's the spare drive that fails? Then what do you do? So for this reason, any drive can be the spare drive, and therefore every drive has redundant data from the other 3. So if any of the 4 die, the machine still operates. The end users can't even tell a difference. You will ideally get an email and a red light over which drive is bad on the front of the unit. You go in there, you don't even have to switch it off. Take the drive out, put the replacement drive in, lock it back in, and tell it to rebuild the array. The whole time it doesn't interfere with anybody using it, other than it may be a little slower during this process. It does not go down. If you don't get around to replacing the bad drive and another drive goes bad, I hope you have backups because your data's gone now. All right, we're going to confirm all the data will be erased. Are you sure? Okay, that's what we wanted to see earlier. But yes, there we go. So it's going to take all 4 of these drives and create 1 large drive with a redundancy on each one that equals the capacity of 1 drive. So it takes just a couple minutes to create the array. But what does it say? Storage pool creation successful. To use the space, create a volume and a file system. Do you want to do that now? I like that they're walking us to now the volume set up automatically. The synchronizing that it says right above here, that's going to take about a day or so. But you don't have to wait for it. I've never seen a brand new array not fail a synchronization. They all do this. Every manufacturer of NAS does this. The size of the drives and how many drives you have determine how long this will take. But you just continue to use the NAS as normal. You don't have to wait for this for any reason. So we hit confirm and we'll go to the volume setup because we can do that now, and we can do everything we want to do as if that synchronization is not taking place. That just goes on in the background. Just ignore it. let it finish, allow it to do what it needs. Don't try to stop it, is what I'm telling you. Just get on with your life and act like don't treat the NAS any differently, is what I'm telling you. You don't have to wait. You don't have to, there's no prerequisite. Just continue using the NAS as though it wasn't doing this other thing in the background, okay? So we hit create. Now we get the same screen we got before regarding creating a volume on an existing storage pool, which I guess it's existing now, right? Or is it a new storage pool? Oh, so I guess when we create a volume on a new storage pool, that's what's taking us to the storage pool, even though it still says create volume. But now I can't even select this because we've used up all the space. If there was space for another storage pool, then this would be optional, but we've already created the storage pool. So I don't even know why it's asking me. This is a needless screen. There's nothing for you to do here other than click next. I think TerraMaster could write their software to have a little bit of artificial intelligence here. We can give a volume a description. This is optional. You don't have to describe it. It does need a name, and the name you can't change for some reason. And the location, if you have multiple storage pools. Don't know why there's a drop-down box here. If there's only one storage pool, you don't have a choice. I think the software, once again, could say, hey, if there's only one storage pool, why are we letting the user select a storage pool? RAID mode is T-RAID, and our capacity will be the total allowed, which says 61440. That's a different number than the 66 we saw earlier, because they went back to gigabytes versus gigabytes again. They keep mixing these two terms up. So we want the max, and that's the default, and that's the way it should be. But if you wanted multiple volumes on the one pool, then obviously you wouldn't want the max. I like to keep everything simple. So I want to use as much space as possible on one volume. And if I want another volume, I'll buy a different NAS. We'll have multiple NASs. But this is an option. It doesn't make it wrong. It just makes life complicated. And you might choose that. We'll hit next. Hyperlock worm. Hyperlock worm is a file system that writes multiple times at once, and it can be used to store sensitive data or files that are not allowed to be modified based on industry-specific regulatory requirements like FINRA regulations from the government or HIPAA regulations from the government. That doesn't apply to you and I, nor would it apply to any of my small business customers, because they're not in those lines of work. So to put us in enterprise or compliance mode may be required where there is government regulation and compliance is required, or you could be fined or face punishment during an audit. I don't know about you, but no government has ever audited my personal equipment or any small business or even medium business equipment. This is something that generally is subject, only large corporations with thousands of employees are usually subject to this level, or if you're in a specific industry, but those people already know that. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you shouldn't have to tell somebody in one of these industries what this is. I mean, you know, they should already know. That's their job. The government expects them to know this. So for us, we're like, huh? Yeah, that's not for us. So just hit next. Now, the file system, I'm a big fan of the B-tree file system, sometimes called Butterfuss or BTRFS. If you like living in the past and like the less efficient and less reliable ext4 from 20 years ago, knock yourself out. Some people, for whatever reason, need the old file system. I think they just are refusing to adapt, but TerraMaster does give you this option. If you want the most reliability, the best data integrity on any NAS, you want the B-tree file system, BTRFS. Hit next, and then it wants to confirm. All right, these are all the options you selected, right? Yes. And again, it doesn't take very long for the volume creation. It's only the synchronization of the initial storage pool that takes a day or so. Again, it could take less, could take longer, depending on how many drives, what the capacity of those drives are. If we had put NVMe drives in this, we could set up a cache. But the cache may not be beneficial depending on how you use the NAS and how many people are accessing it and the kinds of files they're accessing. So like as a video editor, that cache wouldn't do me much good. The files are too large. But if I'm working with a lot of small documents and I have a lot of other employees working on those same documents, the cache would bring those documents to them faster, assuming their network connection was fast enough that it made any difference at all. All right, so that's why it's not important to me. I'm going to close this window here, and you'll see we're currently using 2.2 gigs of what they say is 60 terabytes when we already know it's 66 terabytes. So we went once again back to gigabytes instead of gigabytes. If you want to Google gigabytes versus gigabytes to understand that, and there's YouTube videos, Theo Joe does a great job explaining this. This is an issue primarily identified or a concern of users at home with Windows. To have a NAS follow these same bizarre Microsoft conflation of two different settings keeps giving us different capacity numbers when it's the same number that's being divided differently in different areas of the operating system. So over here they're dividing it by 10, but over here they're dividing it by 8, and it's resulting in two different numbers. Ah, boy. And there's a legitimate reason for that when you're in the industry. But as a consumer, there's no benefit other than confusion. Now, that's pretty much done. We've created our storage pool, we've created our volume. Now we can add a share. So if we close this out, and this will just continue to synchronize in the background, as long as the unit is on, we can log out, we can do everything but turn the unit off. That synchronization cannot be stopped. And we don't have to wait for it. We just continue to use the unit. So if I go to, let's see, this yellow folder, did that create a share for us? Okay, we got something about duple backup, a disaster recovery tool. I'm not going to get into that today, so I just want that to go away and leave me alone. Again, we got an operation succeeded up here that went away before I could even read it or acknowledge it. I mean, potentially I did read it, but it happened so quick. TerraMaster needs to stop that process. If you bring up a message, you leave it there until the end user closes it to verify the end user was able to have time to read it, put it in focus, and acknowledge that they've read it by clicking the box to close the window. That box should not be closing on its own. That really bothers me. So we're going to go to my shares. Did I set up any shares? No, I set up a volume and I set up a pool. Within the volume, I can create folders, or what we call shares. So let's create one. How do we do that? Location, volume 1, public. Oh, it looks like we already have a share here called public. So now, how do we access it? We probably need a name and a password to access this. For who? Well, because this is set up here in a building that has no remote access, I don't feel like people should have to have a password to see the data. They do need a password to make any internal configuration changes. I don't want somebody getting in there and making changes and then calling me with problems that I'm trying to figure out why they're having the problem, and they haven't told me they logged in and made changes. But to just give them access to read and write the data without having to secure it with a password, a lot of people will say that's not secure. Well, if you've got a small business or you're a home user, who are you securing it from in your house? Or what employees do you have you don't trust? And why do you maintain them as employees? Because if I had an employee I didn't trust, I'd let them go. If you're good enough to be working for me or to be in my building as an employee or as a family member, then I'm going to give you access that you need to do your job. At the same time, we can have a combination of both. We can create another folder or another share that does require a password and have another share that doesn't. So if we want to exclude certain data away from people, that is an option, but you can see this gets more complex. And I don't want to confuse people. I want to introduce the concepts to you. And many of you will blow off many of these concepts because it doesn't apply to you. And some of you will say, wow, that's really good to know. I'd like to learn more about that. And you're just a Google search away from any of those details and minutia that matter to you. I'm going to show you the way I set this up for myself and my small business clients. We don't want to require any usernames or passwords. If we have a problem with security, then we have a problem with employees. There's a lack of trust there. That's not good for any business. When your business exceeds a certain size and you have employees, that you don't know all their names, that's a different story. And this may be a little under the requirements for such a company. You might want more of a traditional server and have things like Active Directory and things to restrict access. But in a small business and in a home use, again, it's in my experience, it's not critical. And if anything, it just creates support calls when people get locked out because they've lost their keys. All right, so you do you. So here's how I do it. We've already got a volume here called public, and it's got a recycle bin here. That's great. I'm very happy with that. So now I got a question, who's allowed to access this? By default, having a guest log in with no password across the board of any NAS manufacturer that I've ever worked with turns that off. Something you have to manually go in and turn on. And I agree, that's the way it should be. If you don't know what you're doing, maybe that shouldn't be the default because you might be exposing yourself and don't realize it. So back under, where is it? Under the gear, we should have an option for user. In fact, it's the very first thing called privileges. And the guest account is not enabled. So what we want to do is click this edit button up here. Username is guest, right? You can't even change that. Permissions. I want to give, on this public share, full read and write permissions. You can't really read all of this, but this is to deny altogether. This is read and write, and this is read only, where they can't make changes. And so what you need to do is just check that box for read and write, which finally does appear in full over here. And I only know what the little ellipses mean because of my previous experience. When user and user group permissions conflict, the priority of permissions is to deny and then read write and then read only. All right, whatever, I don't care. Hit apply. When configuring permissions for a large number of files, the process may take some time. So yes, if we're doing this after we've got 1 million files on this thing, it's got to establish those file permissions individually, and that could take a while. But you continue to use the NAS as normal. It's just that those permissions may not be granted until the process is done. So because we haven't put any files on this will be pretty instantaneous. But the guest account is still not enabled. See that? So it doesn't matter that I've given it permission. I have to enable the guest account. So we're going to select the guest account one more time, go back up to edit. And somewhere in here, there should be an enable or disable. Maybe it's under advanced. I don't know where it is. So it doesn't say to enable it. You can disable it or not disable it. You don't get the option of enable or disable. You have disable or don't disable. That's a weird way. Okay, that's fine. So we just say uncheck the box to turn off disabling. And what that does is it enables the account. Hit apply. Wow, that was weird. Now it's normal. We're fine. The storage quota says not enabled. And the storage quota says, don't let this person use up more than this much space because it could shut everybody else out. So we don't worry about that in any business I work with. We don't have any one user that's, this is a user training issue. You should not need to enable a storage quota if the people accessing the NAS have proper training and know better than to say, copy 10 zillion files over to it, which, by the way, slows the entire network down for everybody because that'll take a while to copy. And then it consumes a bunch of space that is no longer available for everybody else. So that is an employee training issue. Therefore, I can't see why anybody would need to use that option, but I don't work with the kind of companies that would have that kind of problem, do I? That's it. At this point now, we should be able to go to this NAS and see it as though it were an attached hard drive or storage device on our computer. On any computer on our network, wireless or wired, we have the same shared storage device. It's a pretty interesting concept. You could have this device located in another building and turn on something like Tailscale and access it from anywhere in the world as though it were attached to the computer you are connecting with. The speed, of course, will be limited by your internet connection if you're outside of the building, or the speed is limited by your network connection inside of the building that the NAS is, or by how many people are accessing the NAS at the same time and how the speed is being fractionalized and divided amongst everybody requesting access at the same time. Okay, it can handle that, it's fine. But if you feel like it's slow, it's probably your network that's slow. This device can distribute up to 10 gigabit. Is it 10? Hold on a minute, now I've forgotten. Let me go back over to our specs. The TerraMaster U4-500 is what we're using today. It's a 4-bay Core i3. And it's got 8 gigs of DDR5 that you can upgrade if you want to. You would upgrade this if you were running virtual machines or software on this device like you would a server. All I'm demonstrating to you today is file sharing. And file sharing, you're not really using much of the RAM and you're not using much of the processor. It's all of those apps, just like on your phone. The more apps you load, the more space and RAM you need on your phone for your phone to maintain responsiveness. This is no different. You will download apps from their app store, and different apps require different amounts of resources, so you might want to add more RAM. And yes, this has dual 10 gigabit Ethernet ports. So if most of my clients are all using 1 gig, it works backwards compatible to 1 gig. If some of my clients upgraded to 2.5 gig, it'll run at 2.5 gig. The only one I know running 10 gig is me. It's still pretty pricey, and these hard drives couldn't even keep up. Like the capacity of 4 mechanical drives could never hit 1,000 gigabits per second. So really what this is for isn't for the speed of an individual user, but it's if you have multiple users in your office, all simultaneously trying to access pretty large files. They could each have their own 1 gig connection speed times 10 before they would notice any degradation. Actually, it's probably closer to 8, because that's then the limitation of the drives themselves. That's where the cache could come in and maybe benefit. But for one individual user to just go to 10 gig doesn't really make much sense. Oh, look, this file only took 30 seconds to copy instead of 3 minutes. Who cares? Just minimize your copy process and keep going. You know, what are you waiting on? How often are you moving files that big anyway? That's suspicious as heck. What kind of business are you in? But when you see these bigger speeds and you're drooling going, oh, it's faster, if you're not sharing that simultaneously with other people at the same time, it really doesn't amount to much other than a bigger expense in your wallet. This is a $900 NAS, which, by the way, that's a great price for what you're getting. Upgrading your switch and your router to be 10 gig and your internet connection will end up costing you over $1,000, including your monthly fee that goes up from your internet service provider. So I hope it's worth it to you, because that monthly fee goes up permanently. Every month you're going to be paying more to your internet service provider for a connection that fast. When you've got a company with a bunch of employees who can be more productive and therefore earn your company more money, well, that pays for itself pretty quickly. If you're a home user just chasing the dragon's tail, have fun with that. All right, so yeah, they're both 10 gig ports. And let's see, where were we? Somewhere around here we have, this was our drive compatibility tab, close that. This explains RAID, I can close that. And I think we can test this bad boy out. One of the ways we can do that would be to simply browse the network for the TNAS and manually find it and click on it. What I like to do is what we call map a drive letter. And I like to make sure all the computers on the network will have the same drive letter, because it's up to you to decide what letter you want to pick for each computer and each share. In order to keep myself from going any crazier, I always want to pick the same drive letter for the same share on every computer. Otherwise, when people call for support and say, hey, my drive G isn't working, but drive G is drive Z on somebody else's computer, that is insane and completely unnecessary. Also, anytime somebody plugs in a flash drive or some other external storage, Windows automatically assigns the next available drive letter. So if we're already using drive A, B, C, well, C, D, and E, and we plug in a flash drive to drive F, and our NAS is drive G, and then we plug in another flash drive or external storage, that becomes drive H, things get really hairy. So I like to go to the opposite end of the alphabet. We start with drive letter Z so we don't get any conflict of a drive letter in use. Windows still struggles with that to this day. So I'll start at Z and then go back to Y, X, V, etc. U, T, S, R. Feel like I'm getting a DUI test right now. So with that, we should be ready to start using this. Now, we don't need to use the TNAS device any longer. That's primarily used specifically for finding this NAS login page so we can make these changes. We can stay logged in or we can log out. Either way is fine. So it's the only time that we use this TNAS PC software is for finding the NAS to log in and configure it, not to just use the shares. We should be able to find this on the network now, and there's a few ways we can do it. One way would be to simply type the name of the NAS in. So for example, let me close this window. Wait, first of all, let's go to camera 1 for a second. Now let me close this window. Okay, you don't see it closed. We've closed the TNAS PC down. We're done with it. If in the future we want to log back in and make any changes, updates, or maintenance, or auditing, we need to find it again. Potentially, if it's getting DHCP, the IP address can change as you reboot the router and as time goes on, or it might not. And I don't want to set a static IP address on it for the reasons I already explained. That's why we have that app. All right. So lots of different ways to accomplish the same task, and every NAS is the same in that regard. For me to now access this, I would get on a computer, and I'm trying to think how I'm going to show this to you. Let me see if I can configure a full screen capture on OBS. Give me just a minute here to add a new source. And I want full screen capture. Video capture device. Window. See, that's the problem. See, there is a display capture. Things get real hairy when I choose display capture on the device I'm using to broadcast from. All right, I suppose I'll be able to do it anyway, but you're going to see some video feedback, meaning picture and a picture and a picture and a picture and a picture. So let's do add a source in OBS. We'll call it display. No, it's not a display capture, is it? Well, there's a video capture device and there's display capture. Maybe it is display capture. Let's see what happens. This will get interesting. All right, yeah, that's exactly what it's going to do. It's creating the feedback. So that's fine. Let's minimize this. Now you should see what I'm seeing when I look across at the monitor. You'll see I'm monitoring. This is why I can't see the chat room, by the way. So when I'm full screen like this, and I want to access my NAS, there's multiple ways I can do that. I can browse my network for it. It should appear. I can also type in the IP address down here, which is this 192.168.68.66. Yours will be different. I can even type in the name of the NAS, which is TNAS, remember? So if I go down here, in multiple ways we can do this, //TNAS/public, that's never existed on the network before. Push enter, it should bring up a big empty drive as though it were attached to the streaming computer that I'm on right now. And the total capacity of this drive is that 60 terabytes. If I don't want to manually type it in, I can click over here. Where is it? View? No. We could do what we call a network map. We might even be able to just type in map drive, map network. Probably helps map a network drive. If I spell it correctly, I bet that'll probably be more useful. Yeah, that's not what I wanted. Hold on. There's a couple different ways we can do this. What I typically do is I go to the My Computer icon. So I typically will go to my desktop, or maybe even this yellow folder will do it. Let's see if it offers it up here. View, it's 3 dots, map and network drive. So right now I have drive C and drive D. So all of my videos that are recorded locally are moved over onto drive D, so I don't use up all my space on drive C. Just in case the YouTube channel wipes me out or whatever, I have backups of all my files, and this takes up a lot of space. In fact, I'm gonna have to probably archive all this and then start again. But where would I archive it to? Well, we could take the video backup and just copy it over. So if I click on this video backup, and you see I've got a bunch of files. If I go to properties on this, look how much space, all that blue, of over 6 terabytes. 6 terabytes of video files. So what if I wanted to free this drive up? Where would I move the data? And it'll take a while to move 6 terabytes. But I'm only going to do it once, right? Once every couple of years. That's probably over a year's worth of files here. So let's just double click and we'll see all the file names. This is how OBS saves them. And if I just want to copy them all, I can highlight them and right click copy. No differently than when you're copying from one drive to another on your own computer, only our drive is on the network. So how do we get to that drive? We're going to map a drive letter, which again, you see the option doesn't exist here. We go back one screen to our main This PC panel. Then on the 3 dots, you'll see the map network drive. And again, there's multiple ways to get here. This is how I do it. I always do it the same, so I don't have to remember 6 different ways. There's no point. If all 6 ways work the same, pick one. So I don't need you to suggest other ways to do this. I'm showing you how I do it. Now we can browse the network and find it. So if I hit browse, you'll see TNAS right there. There's our public share, and I click OK, and this box to reconnect it sign in, meaning every time I start the computer, it'll reconnect drive letter Z. Now look, when I go back to this PC again, I now have drive letter Z. That's the public share. That's the capacity, 59.9 terabytes, right? So I double click and do a paste, and guess what? All my files start copying over. Now I could do a cut and a paste, and normally I wouldn't just copy them onto the root. So if I cancel this copy, make a new folder, right click, choose new folder, we'll call it video backup. That way, whoops, I won't have 1,000 files all listed in my root directory, making it very difficult for me to find what I'm looking for. And then once again, we can paste in here instead. And it's going to move 5.62 terabytes, even though didn't it say 6.1 gigabytes versus gigabytes? Keep talking about this. It's the same number. It's the way they're calculating it. They can't make up their mind. If we go back to this PC, for example, and I right click on the C drive and go to properties, you'll see 2 numbers listed. You'll see capacity is 3,999,231,616. It's 3.99999 essentially is 4 terabytes. But over here it says 3.63. It's telling you the number on the right is the same number as the number on the left, calculated differently. It's the same amount of space. Windows does this. And very critical about Windows doing this. And if you're a developer, this matters. But if you're an end user, this is nothing but confusing. Why is it 3.999 here and 3.63 over here? Gigabytes, gigabytes. It's the same amount, it's the same number divided differently. Oh my gosh, this drives me crazy. So to see TerraMaster following, all I'm saying is pick one. And if you're dealing with consumers, pick the bigger number, or you're going to get support calls. What happened to the rest of my storage? How come after I formatted my drive, I only have 3.63? No, you have 3.99999. Completely avoidable confusion. So in the meantime, we continue to use our computer as we normally would. We can run applications. I can run Word. I can check email. Well, this copy is going on in the background, so who cares how long the copy takes? Who cares? So this copy is going to take a while, right? We're going to be here for a while waiting for 6 terabytes to move across, or what it's reporting here is 5.6, whatever. Our speed is limited by the speed of the network. So this is probably running at 2.5 gig. Typically, yeah, here we go. Now we're getting 2.5 gig speeds. If I plug this into the 10 gig port on the back of the router, and the back of the router is plugged into a 10 gig, well, another, like, let's say the streaming computer is a 10 gig there, then this will go faster, but not faster than the drives and not faster than the network. And when I say not faster than the drives, that includes the drive and the computer I'm copying to. So in this case, I'm copying from the streamer to the NAS, which goes through the router, and it'll run at the fastest speed of whatever, let me rephrase, at the slowest speed of the router, the computer I'm copying from, or to what the NAS is capable of doing. You understand? So you will see this number kind of bounce up and down depending on what's going on with the network, because we're streaming over the network right now, and depending on what the NAS has got going on, which, remember, it's still synchronizing too. So the full capacity and performance of the NAS is not available to us during the synchronization process, but we still use it in a slightly degraded performance. It wasn't always this way. In the old days, we used to have to wait for the synchronization to complete before we could do anything else. That meant you better plan ahead. All right. I think I made my point. I'm going to cancel this copy because I don't need that. I just want to demonstrate how that works. Once we're set up, we just use it this way indefinitely until we run out of space, and even then we could just replace drives and expand the storage as needed. It's a really simple setup. Let me bring OBS back up, so be prepared for the video feedback, and then we'll go back over to camera 1. There. Wasn't too painful, was it? Now, let me get back over to the chat room because I've not been paying attention. I feel like I covered this much better this time. When it comes to the apps, we'll look at that, and then we'll wrap it up for today, barring any questions that you have. So let me just take a break and give you guys a chance, well, for me to get caught up and for you guys to introduce any questions that I've not seen. So if you did have questions that you asked while I've been distracted, please re-ask those questions again, and I will do my best to provide an answer for you. All right, so bear with me for a second. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, Mara mentions I got some good pizza last night. Went into a pizza coma. Mara and I went to see the new How to Train Your Dragon movie, live action movie, which I guess they had a preview night. We were like one of maybe 12 people in the theater. What a fantastic, it's almost shot for shot the same movie. And I'm glad it's being introduced to a new audience, and it's still a great, great movie. And the person who directed the original movie, the animation, is the same person that does this live action. And I'm telling you, it's shot for shot. It's fantastic. I hope that movie does well. It deserves to. Thomas says, happy belated birthday. Oh, it's not my birthday yet. Let's not rush things. Thank you. Let's see. David says, did you have to say pizza? Now I'm hungry. The last thing I want is pizza at this point. I overdid it. I'm still satiated. Steve Chappelle wants to know, what would be the life cycle of a NAS? I've had my NAS since 2018. I would suggest that the NAS life cycle is determined by the availability of updates, no differently than any other operating system. When we talk about Windows 10, for example, we all know, we've been hearing it for years now, Support ends in October of 2025, this year. Finally, people have a justifiable reason to be worried about it. When people were asking me 3 or 4 years ago, what am I going to do? It makes my head hurt. So it's not that Windows 10 will stop working. It's that its defenses are going to start getting holes. And the patches patch the holes. When Microsoft stops issuing patches or updates, then you're just going to have holes getting bigger and bigger and more until eventually you're just a giant piece of Swiss cheese and you're handing out all of your data to complete strangers in other countries around the world willy-nilly, and they'll just take it without asking, and you may not even be aware of it until you see it out in the wild. Too late, too bad, so sad. So even though you're saying, well, my Windows 10 still works, your defenses are gone. You ever play the game Space Invaders? In Space Invaders, you can hide behind a shield, and every time your enemy hits the shield, it damages it until eventually it destroys a hole in the shield. And eventually, if you play long enough, if you let the enemies survive long enough, they destroy the shield where you have no shield left, and now you've got to dodge all the bullets. There may be nowhere for you to dodge if 2 bullets are coming down side by side. You're gone. There's no way out of that. Imagine if you could rebuild the shield. Wouldn't that be great? That's what patches and updates do for Windows and why they're so critically important. People are hacking in ways you have no concept of, that I have no concept of, regardless of your technical ability. And these specialists who are made aware of that every single hour of every single day, there's another pile of paperwork of ways that people are breaking in that they never thought of before. And they're like, okay, how do we stop this? And it is making a better product, right? The damage these people are causing is resulting in Microsoft building a response that shuts that down. So then they find another different way. If you're somebody trying to cause harm, and all you do is repeat the same thing and it doesn't work, so you do it again, it's still not going to work. So I've seen people that they hear, hey, if you want to be successful, you got to just stick to it. When people tell you to stick to something, what they mean is not to keep repeating what you already know doesn't work. What they mean is keep coming up with a different approach until you find an approach that works. When they find an approach that works, then Microsoft is made aware of it, they close that door. So if they keep going at that, that's never going to open that door ever again. You're just wasting your time. You'll never succeed. You have to take another approach, find a different door. Find somewhere they didn't know there was a door. But the minute they find it, they'll close it, lock it, or remove the door. So if you keep going at that door, it doesn't exist anymore. You're just wasting your time. So when people tell you to stick to it, what they mean is keep changing your approach until you find something that works. That's what hackers do. Good ones. I shouldn't say good ones, effective ones. And then Microsoft responds and they close it. And then they find another one. This goes on indefinitely till the end of time. So the updates eventually get sloppy, right? The code's getting patched and patched and patched. Imagine you're wearing a pair of jeans and every time you get a small hole in them, you sew it up. After a while, it looks like you're wearing rags. You might as well be Tarzan at this point. It's time for a new pair of jeans. So, same is true with a NAS. If you have an old NAS, like the Seagate Black Armor, it's slow, it won't see the biggest drives, it's not been updated in years, and it requires SMB1 networking, which Microsoft has disabled because you'd have to be extraordinarily ignorant, in my opinion, to turn SMP1 back on. Oh, and I've seen it. I've seen customers go, damn Microsoft for turning this feature off because now I can't access my 20-year-old NAS. Oh my gosh. You're going to disable the security because your NAS still works fine. And you're going to continue to just go out without a shield and let the enemy just come and attack you while you're asleep at night and you're not even aware it's happening because you think Microsoft is stupid. Okay, I think we know who the stupid one is. Not to be blunt, but to be blunt, you'd have to be a fool to turn on SMB1 unless you fully understand firewall protocols and you have a far more in-depth knowledge. And even then, if and when that comes back to bite you on the ass, I have no sympathy for you. If you have old networking equipment that requires SMB1, to answer your question of how long will this last, until at such point it is no longer being updated or is no longer compatible with modern network requirements, which are there to keep you safe on the worldwide internet, filled with more and more hackers every day to steal, cause you harm, steal your money, steal your identity, and have absolutely no consequences if they succeed. There's nothing you can do to a person in another country that is not a US ally. They are completely safe from any law enforcement. And you know what you can do? Nothing. Nothing. The amount of money and trouble it causes you, you brought upon yourself because you bypassed or ignored the security requirements because it's not happened to me. Okay, well, we'll just wait till it happens to you. It will. Give it time. You're just like everybody else. You're not immune. If you think you can outsmart it, good for you. And when it happens to you, you just look away or blink and they're already in. You've got to be diligent, and you must have the energy level every single day for the rest of your life. And the minute you get tired or distracted because you decided to skirt around the security, boom, it's already done. It takes milliseconds. So while you might be all up on being current and vigilant, you will get tired. You will eventually, as a human being, skip a day, take a day off. Boom, you're in. So if you want to avoid all of that stress and anxiety, make sure you have current updated equipment. So if Windows 10 support ends, you'd be a fool to keep using it for more than a couple of months. I think it's pretty foolish to even use it then, but you'll probably be okay until 2026. Unless you pay for the extended updates. If this TerraMaster operating system is no longer being updated, you'd be a fool to have this online. Absolutely foolish. You're basically leaving your windows and doors unlocked to your house and your car, your wallet on the porch, and you're hoping, or you're believing, that some higher power is going to make sure you're immune from the effect that the rest of us suffer from. Let's see how far that gets you. Maybe you're lucky in life. Maybe we'll find out when you're dead that it never happened. That's your choice too. I don't like to take risks. And my customers don't pay me for risks. They pay me for assurance, for insurance. So we make sure we do everything in our power to protect ourselves, because you can still have all your protection in place and do some boneheaded thing like opening an attachment or clicking on a link that bypasses everything. It's like having a great alarm system in your house and you turn it off to let a criminal in your home who said, "Oh, I'm with the power company. Can I come into your house?" And you believed them. And so you bypassed all that security. It caused your own harm. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, because the harm devastates. People have killed themselves. They've committed suicide over the fact that their whole life savings was stolen from them in the blink of an eye with no legal repercussion. Too bad. You're gone. It's done. You're retired. Your income that you were living off of has been stolen. The enemies who stole it don't care. And you didn't care enough about your security because that's never going to happen to me. And now it's too late. It's not worth it. Just replace the equipment. It's faster, cheaper, going to perform better. It's going to be more compatible. You're not going to deal with as many problems statistically of keeping it running. That's how, when you know how to replace it. There's no set date. Depends on how long a company keeps it updated, or if the technology changes where the actual hardware has to change. Like for SMB2 or SMB3, you may not be able to implement that on old hardware even if you wanted to. You have to replace the hardware or take it offline if you give a rat's behind about what's on that device. Peter with a €2 contribution. Thank you, Peter, joining us from the Netherlands. I'm very passionate about security because people blow it off. And I just think how ignorant some people are to think reality does not apply to them, but they're going to participate with the world online where half of that world is out to get you. But you choose to ignore it like an ostrich putting their head in the sand. And so long as there's no consequences you've been made aware of, You think you don't need to do anything. Well, you can believe that all you want. And maybe you're right. Good luck with that. So I appreciate that question. It's a question, as I mentioned, that doesn't have a solid answer, but when the company stops supporting it, that's pretty much when it's done. If TerraMaster goes out of business and there's no more updates, even though we just got it, it's done. Ghostly Lurker said internet speeds have also confused people with bits versus bytes. Well, maybe. I mean, there is a standard where when we talk about speed, we usually talk about bits. When we talk about storage, we usually talk about bytes. There's at least an agreed upon standard of which one we're supposed to use. That doesn't mean that people all know the standard or follow the standard. But when it comes to gigabytes versus gigabytes, that's an unnecessary confusion, where gigabytes is a smaller number. Nobody wants to see a smaller number, but if you're a developer, that may be required if you're doing anything like system utilities and things where things are calculated that way in programming. We don't need that for the end user to be seen at all. It just creates an unnecessary concern. That unless you're a developer, you don't need to know it. All right, it's an unnecessary support call. As you can see, I've had enough of those support calls. They're nothing. They're just like, why is the wall blue? Because someone painted it blue. Like, do you want to become a painter? Or why are you calling me for this? It's not tech support, it's tutoring. Tutoring, you charge for tutoring. That's private tutoring. Tech support is for fixing errors with the device or the software, not teaching you how to use it. That's not tech support. That's private tutoring. People expect tech support for free, but if you think private tutoring is free, oh, you're going to be in for a world of disappointment. John Downey says, can you host a virtual machine on this NAS? Absolutely, yes. One of the things that I want to get back to is going through their app store. Just like on your phone, you have all kinds of apps, from backup utilities to games and everything in between. Much the same way, although Synology probably leads the way with your choice of apps because it's been around longer. These other companies, Ugreen, TerraMaster, QNAP, they are quickly catching up. ASUS Store, all of them. They know they have to compete. And the first apps they're going to concentrate on developing are going to be the most needed apps by the vast majority of people. Once they get that all settled in, then they can go for the more niche apps. And then there are GitHub and other communities that develop apps. If you want to trust them, you can check a box that says, let me put my own app that I developed myself, or somebody in a community that TerraMaster has not approved it. But they won't stop you from putting it on there if you know where to check the box to say, hey, let me put third-party apps on, and I'll accept responsibility if it causes any issues. We'll get to that. John Downey said the IT standard is to have a U drive mapped as your network drive. I'm not familiar with that. I think in the world you live in, the community, the part of the world, that's what they use. I am not aware in my world, in Phoenix, of utilizing a U drive. I do not agree that that is a standard that exists beyond the areas of fields that you work in. So maybe the medical field, or maybe you work in the accounting field. I'm not aware that such a standard exists outside of a specific industry. But at the same time, I don't really think that much matters, because that assumes they have one share. What if you have 3 shares? What if you have 5 shares? So I think whoever's doing the support whether it's an IT department, company policy, or an individual such as myself, as long as you're the one supporting it, you're the one who needs to know what standards you follow, period. You shouldn't need anybody to identify to you as a trained technician what drive letter is a map drive, regardless of what the letter is. And very rarely do I run into businesses that only have one. They'll have one for this application, right? We store all of our data in QuickBooks over here, and we store all of our data in Microsoft Office or Word over there. And they like to give them different drive letters so the employees don't have to be trained on how file systems work. So the system I use is, okay, everybody needs access to this one folder. That's the most common folder everybody's going to use. That starts with Z. And as the folder becomes more specialized, it goes further back. So if there's one user that needs one folder, they'll probably be somewhere around U or T. But not everybody's going to have that folder, only they will. And that's the logic I use. And I have never been in a corporation where, or two separate corporations where they identified the same standard practice with that. But maybe you have. So whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you, if that's a standard, I've never heard of that in my life. And I've been in this business a long time. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but not in the services that I offer to my clients. I've never seen that. Or in the big corporations that I've worked in, I've never seen that. They all have their own rules. All right. Just an interesting discussion. Like I said, it's not meant as a correction, just as a point of consideration of perspective. Doman 2000 said it's a good thing that Windows Defender continues to function. That won't fix holes and exploits of services and applications. So if you're running Adobe or Word, the actual programs you run within the operating system, they get patched too. Your browser gets patched. Why do you think that's happening? An antivirus doesn't help you against service exploits. So, you know, it's something, and I guess you could say something's better than nothing, but it's not ideal. Not for anybody who cares about their identity or their data. I mean, if that's good enough for you, I hope you're not in this line of work. Very unprofessional. People say the echo you're hearing. What you're hearing is the NAS. In fact, if I turn the filter off my audio, the fans on this are quite noticeable. If I click on these three dots, go to filters, let me turn the noise suppression off. No, that's not doing it. Hold on. We've got to turn off the noise gate. So to give you an idea of my speaking volume, it's quite pronounced. This is intended to be in Iraq, not the country Iraq. This is intended to be in a server rack in a storage room with a door closed. So noise shouldn't, everything in there is loud. So this, by comparison, is not that loud. Now let me turn my filters back on. Ah, that's better. BH Ringer wants to know if I have a specific or particular chair for sitting while at a computer. What type of brand do you prefer? I was born and raised in a family that could barely make ends meet. In fact, probably had more debt. They couldn't keep up with the debt. If we had a chair, we were lucky to have a chair. If we had a couch, if we had a TV, the very fact that we had one We did not have the luxury of picking out which one was preferred. It was, you can have this or you can have nothing. So when you ask me these questions, my reaction is, I'm not rich. I don't have a preferred chair. When I typed on a keyboard, I don't want to sound like an old man. When I typed on a typewriter, a mechanical typewriter required some force to get the hammer to strike on the paper without fading out. And then when we got to the electric typewriter, and you had the keyboard on an electric typewriter, never once did it occur to me that wasn't super fantastic and so much better than mechanical. So when you guys talk about Cherry MX switches and blah, 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 all I hear is spoiled, rotten, entitled, finicky, defenseless, weak individuals. I know I have a feeling about that, who has to have everything custom tailored for them. I wasn't raised with a silver spoon in my mouth, and nor do I even have one now. I don't care what kind of a keyboard you have. My Atari 400 had a membrane keyboard where you literally had to push down until you heard a beep to know if that key press went through. You don't touch typing on that bad boy, and I was happy. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. I have a computer at home. When I sit in a chair, I never once think about if I'm comfortable. Never. It could be a wooden stool. It could be a Barca lounger. It never occurs to me that this could be more comfortable. It just doesn't. That is not in my frame of mind. I was not raised that way. I was raised for, this is what you get, and you can have it or nothing, and if you don't like it, you can go figure it out on your own. So that is instilled in me. I didn't ask for it, and it is part of who I am for that reason. So no, I do not have a chair I like. I'm sorry. No. I'm just happy to have a chair. They all do the same job. My butt is not that delicate. Nothing about me is that delicate. I do appreciate your question. Peter says you can now buy Windows 10 Enterprise and it's valid until 2032 with updates. So the problem with that logic is the reason Microsoft does that for enterprises is enterprises have IT departments that maintain the network and maintain the desktops. And when there's feature updates to enhance Windows like AI and things, the company will not get any of that. And the company's IT department is responsible for all of the support at that point. So if you want to be, so it's like you're saying, you can still buy a car without air conditioning and you'll never have to replace the air conditioning ever again. All you do is roll the windows down. If you want to go featureless and you're willing to accept that you're going to be left behind because you think you're outsmarting the people, you're creating your own nightmare. Good luck. If you're of that mindset, you should not be using Windows. That mindset is for corporations that have IT support departments that don't need Microsoft support and don't need those features. If you're of a Linux mindset and you're trying to make Windows work like Linux, it's like you want a dog, but you bought a cat and you want the cat to behave like a dog. Good luck. Good luck with that. You're using the wrong tool. Trying to manipulate a tool to meet your needs means you're using the wrong tool. You're not outsmarting anybody. All you're doing is limiting yourself. But yes, you're not breaking the law. Have at it. I won't support you. If you say, Carey, I'm having a problem with my Windows 10 computer in 2026, I can't help you. Nope, can't do it. You're on your own now. Bottom line. Even if you bought the extended support, I cannot help you. And I think you'll find Geek Squad and any other professional repair center will tell you we will not support that. There's too much liability at risk for us. You can take that liability on, but we're not going to. You can take that somewhere else. So if you're okay with that, have at it. But then you might as well just be using Linux with that attitude, in my opinion. You're just not the right user for Windows. And Peter with another contribution here, joining us from the Netherlands, €1. Thank you, Peter. John Downey said ergonomics is a big issue and many companies worry about the proper chair for using the computer. I wouldn't know. At no point during my working career in corporations during the 90s was ergonomics ever more than a discussion. It never really amounted to anything. You know, they had the split keyboards. Yeah. And what we believe is healthy today, we usually end up going back and saying, no, we were wrong. If you look at the history of the industry, oh, you should stop eating butter because butter's not good for you. You should have margarine instead. That's healthier. No, it isn't. Actually, butter's healthier. Okay, we take it back. You're better off with butter. Oh, these non-stick Teflon pans are great, aren't they? No. Teflon uses PFAS, which is a chemical that, you know, as it gets older, it breaks off and you ingest it. It's a forever chemical, and it causes cancer. And if you have any scratch on a Teflon pan, you should immediately throw it away. You're ingesting it. But this is the human race. We think we know everything. And so we say, oh, vitamins are good for you. Okay, when did vitamins come out? The 1970s. Prior to that, there was no such thing as a vitamin. Do they work? Depends who you ask. So we could go round and round and round. So this idea that, well, you should be at this posture and sit in this way. Really? Are you that delicate? That's just not how I was raised, man. I don't see other animals on this planet, any other living animal, who cares so much about their comfort being healthy. And yet at the same time, will eat the worst thing possible from junk food and processed foods and destroy themselves from within. But hey, at least they got good posture. I don't know. I don't subscribe to this temporary logic that we figured it out. Hey, a glass of wine a day is good for you. A glass of wine is good for your heart. A glass of wine is bad for you, and you shouldn't be having the glass of wine. Now it's good for you. Now it's bad for you. They can't even make up their mind on that. If you ask these people, they'll tell you it's good. If you ask those people, both medical professionals in different areas of expertise, they'll say it's bad. The tannins are good for you. The tannins are bad for you. The alcohol is good for you. The alcohol is bad for your liver. It goes on and on and on and on and on. So you can subscribe to whatever belief you want. But if you think that we're smart enough as a human species to figure this out and we know, you're wrong. And all you got to do is look to your past. How many times have they said something, they being, you know, the government food pyramid? It is so wrong. And yet I was raised that this is what your diet should be, the food pyramid. The food pyramid couldn't be worse. It's upside down. It's completely 180 degrees backwards. Or is it? Where we say it's sideways in 6 more years. I don't know. So I would take anything you hear about that with a grain of salt. Companies are worried about being sued. They're worried about OSHA compliance. That's different than actually having a real need. That's how I see it. Yeah, I'm shaking my head. Somehow, my generation has survived without any problems. The generation before me, or I wouldn't be here if the ancestry died off because they didn't sit in a proper chair, or they couldn't breed because of the bone condition. The very fact that we exist, that we've lived to be the age we have, what is it we're trying to fix exactly? And who knows, maybe they're right, maybe they'll stick with something. We'll find out in 50 years. But then I guess it won't matter, will it? JTT555G became a supporter. Welcome in, JTT. David Graham says, I never had a chair when I used to build white box. Yeah, if you've ever worked on an assembly line, at least in building computers, I don't recall anybody having any chairs. The people that work at Amazon warehouses probably aren't sitting around much. And it's a lot healthier for you to get up and move. That doesn't mean you won't be hit by a car or die from smoking that you might do to yourself. But I'm not too worried about any of that stuff as long as I have freedom of movement. When I saw my mother starting to have difficulty getting in and out of the car, and she was only like 60, I'm like, you shouldn't have that difficulty at 60. you better do something about it now. You better start exercising or walking more. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and use the pool a lot more. And she never did. And then when she got sick, she just didn't have the strength to recover. So, you know, it's your choice. As a human being, that is your choice. But I see Dick Van Dyke at 99 years, how old is he? And he's moving and he's dancing and he's got great mobility. And you say, well, what's your secret? And he'll say, keep moving. That resonates with me. That doesn't make him immune from disease, but it certainly keeps him mobile. He's not using a walker. I think he's got a cane now. But I mean, at some point we all, if you live to be that old, you know, that's expected. That's the best you can hope for, quite frankly. David Graham with a $2 super chat. Oh yeah, I met that one already. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you for your questions. Let's take a look at the apps on this right quick, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So let me jump back over. Let's see. I need to be on this browser tab, and we'll go back to our TOS here, which is, should be the screen. No, it's not coming up. This screen right here. Okay, that's better. When you want to find apps, just like on your phone, we would go to usually like an app store. So I don't know, let's go find it somewhere. Start? No, it's not under Start. It's not the file manager. All applications, that's what we want. If I just hover the mouse over the icon, you'll see we get the little spinning toilet bowl flushing. That's what it looks like to me. Remember, the NAS is still synchronizing the drives in the background, so the performance of it will be slightly degraded. Plus, it's probably going out to the internet and grabbing information from the TerraMaster servers with regards to what are the latest apps. And it may even also be looking at what apps we have installed to compare against what new versions may be available to suggest updates. So just give that a second, and we should see that come up. Once it loads the first time, it should be cached, and it should load much faster in the future. And I'll keep using the word should because I'm basing it on the way other app stores with other NASs work. And to have a slight delay is unusual. To have a slight delay is common, but to have a long delay like this is unusual. And I'm not quite sure if it's simply because we've never run it before and there's some setup happening, or if something is wrong. So I just want to be patient and give it a minute. And I guess the best way to give this a minute is for me to just go back to the chat room and find something to distract myself. So let me jump back over there right quick and see what other questions or comments we have to answer or address. Nothing. Okay. Gentleman 2000 mentioned some people could be stuck on Windows 10. If you're stuck on Windows 10 and you're watching this video, please tell me why. Because I think most people stuck on Windows 10 have a mental stickiness, not an actual one that exists in reality. And if I'm wrong, please explain it to me so I can understand. Because I don't understand that. Help me understand. All right, let me go back over to, let's see, I need to refresh this page. Now, clearly you can tell from this review, a much different experience than my first review, which is why I felt obligated to redo it, because I was not prepared. Normally, I don't need preparing, but in this case, it does happen sometimes. Got to take a step back and readdress or rethink my approach. I still feel like TerraMaster could have made that more intuitive, But I also feel like if I had done what most users do and put new drives into it, this never would have been an issue. Like the odds of somebody having some drives laying around that were previously configured in a TerraMaster NAS and they forgot, probably won't not one single viewer will say that's not beneficial. Like, I have no idea how that scenario would ever occur in my life. So that was not representative of what I like to do here, which is to go through the motions of a typical end user, and even a typical IT department for that matter. So let me go back over now to the TOS software. It's still spinning, and I don't know why nothing's loaded. Something's wrong with this. So let me refresh. It could be that TerraMaster signed me out, like it could have timed out, and for security reasons logged me out of the operating system. So when I hit refresh, it's asking me for my username again. So let me jump back over here. And that suggests that if it didn't refresh without asking me for a re-login, that the reason it wasn't loading is because I wasn't logged in anymore. Again, TerraMaster, if that's the case, should have alerted me that I've been logged out. So no big deal. Let's just make sure we'll verify. I could have just clicked the stay logged in button, but too late for that. Now, let's go back to the store. See how much faster that, all applications. So these are the applications I believe that are installed, but not the applications that are available, because we only have like 8, right? We've got the file manager, we got the backup, the control panel, and oh, the app center. So we want the shopping bag if we want to look for other apps. If we want to look for apps we've already installed, then you go to this icon, all apps. This shopping bag is the app center. That's what I should have been clicking on. Tips: most applications have background processes that mean that once an application is installed, it will occupy system resources, right? That's why 8 gigs of RAM for the few applications we have is plenty. But if we're going to install a bunch of apps like VMs and Kubernetes or Docker, then we're going to need more RAM. So that's fine. It's just reminding you, the more you install, the more resources you need, or the system's going to slow down. Because if I put a bunch of stuff on your back, you probably won't walk as fast, right? If I'm like, here, carry this 50-pound backpack, I promise it's going to slow down your pace. Now put on this 100-pound backpack. At some point, you're going to need some help. So that's the same thing. You have certain resources available of what you can carry and how fast you can walk with it on your back. So does the NAS, so does your computer. That's what we use: RAM, CPU power, etc. So for what we're using this for in file sharing, it's very little resources. But if we want to use this backup software, there's a lot of different backup software to choose from here. Centralized backup. And by the way, we're under the recommended section. If you want to see everything, you would click on all. And then it's probably, is it alphabetized? I don't know. It looks like it's all alphabetized. There's Docker, Drupal, Jellyfin, Joomla, Mantis. There's a multimedia server, MyWebSQL if you're in a SQL server, PHP for developing, Surveillance Manager for cameras, Synchronization versus backup, which is a form of backup, USB copy backup, VPN server if you want to create that, or a web server if you want to host your own website. This goes on and on. Java Virtual Machine for developers, PHP for developers. There's Plex, there's BitTorrent, there's a way that you can do your downloads on the NAS so it doesn't consume your resources on your desktop. There's VirtualBox. That's what you would use, for example, as a choice to install for creating x86 virtualization for installing Linux or Windows or what have you. Then you've got community apps. These are ones that people themselves have developed and share with the community, but TerraMaster is not approving them. They could be good, they could be dangerous. You have to click this box and agree to take that risk on your own and accept responsibility. And when you hit confirm, now we can see what the community has developed, and this will always be changing. So lots of stuff here. It may have absolutely zero value except for very specific audiences. Updates to pre-existing community apps, the most common downloaded apps here. Tailscale, I'm a big fan of Tailscale. Then we've got Image, I don't even know what that is. WireGuard. Yeah, this just keeps going and going. Hey, there's a user manual. So I would avoid the user-created apps unless you're somebody who's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I could take my whole network down. Who cares? I could have to reformat my whole system as a result. But I wouldn't do that to a customer. So we're going to use only supported apps. So we have a chain of blame. I don't know why I'm getting an ad down here. This must be a website. Yeah, it's taking us to this website. So we're outside of the operating system now. Let's close that tab, get back in our OS. We can look at the apps we have installed and then, check and make sure if there's any updates, they'll be here. We go to settings and, we can even develop an app ourselves and put it on ourselves without sharing it with anybody. That's an open nature of this operating system, which I appreciate. So if you want to cause your own fire, potentially, they're not stopping you. Apple Computer Corporation, they would prevent you from that. Just so you know, they will protect you from yourself. And they're going to charge you a lot of money for that added protection that basically prevents you from doing things they think could cause you harm. In the world of Windows, though, we're given choices and allowed to make decisions. And the problem we're having is getting people to accept responsibility. If you refuse to accept responsibility, don't do it. It's pretty simple. So the recommended apps are the most commonly downloaded apps, like Docker, for example. I don't use Docker. I don't do that kind of work. But I could see where this can replace servers entirely. You don't need a $5,000 server to run applications when a $600 or $900 NAS, in this case, can do the same job the same way for 20% of the price. Uh-oh, here she comes.
I just wanted to say this is a great review.
You like this one better than the first one?
Oh my gosh, this is so great.
You want to come over here and say hello?
Yeah, I don't have my shoes on.
So what? Don't go away. What are you doing?
I want to put my shoes on.
Oh my gosh, if you got to get ready, never mind. If we can't see you for who you really are.
How hard is it to put my shoes on?
She doesn't want to appear so short. So she puts on, when she says shoes, she means elevator lifts. What floor are you going to in those? I better get out of punching
I
range.
didn't want to be able to see over the desk.
So when I look at the NAS, so you're more familiar, say hello, sorry.
Hi, everybody.
Back to business.
Back to business.
When you're used to working in a higher level of IT support than I am, right, in big corporations with thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, hundreds, if not only hundreds of thousands, but millions of customers, you're at a scale that I never got to, nor did I ever want to be clear. If we go back over to this screen and you look at what we have available here in the apps, let me give you the mouse. Does anything strike you as very appealing or unexpected on a NAS that you would typically see on a very expensive server?
You mean like an enterprise NAS?
Yeah.
None of these apps. None.
No, not like an enterprise. Well, I don't know. This is an enterprise NAS.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying is I would not use these in an enterprise.
Why not?
Because they're not appropriate.
Well, let's say you had a smaller company, and that company could theoretically buy a server in a traditional sense, or they could buy a NAS and avoid that cost and maintenance of a Windows-based server, let's say. And you could put Docker on here.
Yeah. That might be appropriate. I mean, I don't know because I'd have to use it.
You've never used it.
I have not used that particular one. I've used other Docker apps, but that one in particular, I'd have to get a very good understanding of what it's doing and what it's going to provide to be able to suggest it as an option. And I would never offer something that I haven't had personal experience with.
What about any of the backup software? Do you have a preference for how backups are made from one NAS to another, or synchronization, or to USB?
Well, again, it depends on the NAS. It depends on the corporation or the business that you're working.
What if
for.
it's your own small business? Would you put your own web server up on a NAS versus a server?
If I needed to have an external facing DMZ,
and you had a very limited budget where you couldn't afford AWS or something, would you consider that?
possibly, but again, I'd have to use it.
Okay.
I'd have to use it. It just wouldn't be appropriate to not have a very good understanding of security, what it can provide for me and for the business, and what it's capable of. It wouldn't be appropriate.
iBoss is a next-generation web-based application for database management over the web that you're hosting here instead of on a traditional server.
I understand.
You know what Jellyfin is?
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of things on here that look fun from a consumer standpoint, like being at home, playing with stuff.
What about small business standpoint?
So that's the thing.
What about VirtualBox?
Right. Again, I have to play with it.
For enterprise and home use. Hey, look, they give us the default username and password. Because there is one.
Can that be usable? Possibly. But I'd have to really
Depends
get a good
on what somebody needs.
That is correct.
Oops, I keep bringing up the community
Yes.
apps. Let me go back to, how do I get back? There's no back button here. I can't figure out how to, it's like install or download. So again, this could be something they fix in the software. I close it and then I have to just reopen it, I guess. And then I'll tell this to stop telling me. There's a deduplication manager to look for duplicate files.
I understand.
Free up space.
Which actually I think is quite neat. And I saw those when we were playing with it before, and I wanted to poke around.
Is there, well, there's WordPress. All right, is there anything you'd like me to install and check out while you're standing here?
The dedupe is a good one. Docker.
Let's do, because Docker in and of itself needs an app to load into the Docker.
Yeah.
So rather than digging in that Pandora's box, let's go. Oh, there's an RSS feed. There's Duple Backup. That's what TerraMaster keeps promoting. That's their own backup tool that does a lot of stuff. There's good old-fashioned ClamAV. That's a manually run antivirus that's been around forever. It's open source and free, but it also doesn't prevent anything. It just kind of helps you to clean what you already have.
Right.
All right. Let's see. Backupper, Apache Tomcat. Oh, that's for server, Java.
Correct. That is this for hosting web pages.
Deduplication Manager. Let's install that.
Yeah.
It gives us a downloading option.
But I want to play with it. So, like, how well does it work?
Yeah, well, I guess if you like, so my clients, they have over 1 million files.
Right.
There's probably a lot of duplication in there that could free up a lot of space and confusion, by the way.
Right.
So I guess we have a scan button. What does it say create? Create what?
Probably a scheduler.
I don't understand. General name, dedupe. Next. Oh, I see. So this sets what kind of scan you want. So we can look for just folders that have nothing in them. Why do we have them, right? We can look for only large files or only small files if we want to. And then there's a checksum algorithm, which I would, again, if you're really concerned about data integrity, you probably want to do the SHA 256. At this point, it probably doesn't matter because we don't have much on it. But the SHA 1 is likely the default. That's fine. And then hit next. And then I would set manual for deduplication settings. I wouldn't want it to auto clean.
Right.
And then we confirm those settings.
Yeah.
And then what happened next? Where does it go? Oh, just took a while.
It just took a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then you can set this to run on a schedule, I guess. Yeah. Or you could just run it manually. We've got it in manual. Listen to those fans.
I hear it. I hear it.
So when this thing's working, when this thing's working, if you thought it was loud before, because it just cranked up a notch now that we started this task. And this task is going to take RAM and it's going to take resources of the CPU, right?
That's surprisingly quite loud. Yeah.
Well, it probably doesn't help that all the ventilation holes are facing the desk and I'm suffocating it.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, well, that's running. We'll just take a quick look over here back to camera 1. and I can jump back over to our chat room.
Yeah. Hi,
Gregory
everybody.
Gregory Howard just renewed membership now for 21 months, a member and supporter.
Thank you, Gregory.
He says hello to you in all
Hi,
the chat.
Gregory.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us today.
Patrick said, I did post in our forum if current gaming laptop desk would be suitable for a mini PC a while ago, but right now it's saving. Oh, he's saving. Yeah, it's really hard to say what's going to work for you. There's no such thing as a mini PC desk. Are you leaving me?
I am leaving.
All right, get the hell out.
I got to get rid of this coffee.
Is that your way of saying you use it in the bathroom? Because that's how most people get rid of coffee. All right, anyway. No, I don't know how to answer what desk is right for you. Any desk will work for any PC or any use of a desk. Is it right for a candle? Is it right for a television? Is it right for a dinner plate? You have to make that determination. What you don't want to do is enclose it in a cabinet where it can't breathe. So as long as it's got area, air to breathe, any electronic device should be fine. So if you're waiting on an answer and you're not getting one, it's because one doesn't exist, or the answer is conditional upon why are you asking the, like, what are you worried about? Like, what about the desk do you think could be different to accommodate or not accommodate a mini PC? That I might be able to answer, but as far as I know, a desk is a desk, and how you utilize it is your choice, and it doesn't matter what you put on it. But, regarding anything but weight limit, I suppose, you're like, hey, would this desk be appropriate for a 1,000-pound statue? Well, you better check the weight limits of the desk. That's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, be sure and use our forums when possible for those kind of questions, because not only myself, but other members of the community may have answers for you as well. The forums are free for everybody. Just visit our video notes below every video. There's the link to the forums. We'd love to see you in there. They're always open 24/7 and they're always free. Jim says, I think I'll stick with my home-built NAS. So again, when you're working for paying clients, there's something called the blame chain. So if you built the NAS and you support the NAS, then you're the one who gets the blame. If any loss or downtime, it's your fault. And you will pay the consequences for that, whether it's lost business or a lawsuit, whatever it takes, whatever the company feels is right. And if you're a home user and you want to do that and the only one you're affecting is you, then you're using the right tool. But if you're a home user and you refuse to accept any responsibility for your choice of decisions, then you should be buying something prepackaged and ready to roll so that you have somewhere to go for support. You have nowhere to go for support other than Google and your own sort of time and effort. And whatever downtime or investment you make in time or money to fix it is how you're paying for that. Or you just pay for this and now the blame falls over here to the manufacturer or their software. And it's your choice to make. But understand the reason why these choices exist. In a corporate environment or even a small business, there must be a chain of blame. And whoever is at the end of that chain is held accountable to whatever expense or litigation that results in. So for the idea of consistency of different customers having different needs, we wouldn't customize TrueNAS over here and Unraid over here and Open Media Vault over there. You would be buried under labor, and the companies will probably balk at what you're charging them for your time when you could just set up a little box like this that uses less power than anything home built. You won't need a keyboard, a mouse, or a monitor to configure it and install it. And when it comes to any sort of blame, then you have the next chain to pass it on to. And that is all typically documented in and has to be approved the bigger the company is. You can't just decide, I want to install TrueNAS or Unraid. That has to go through a committee, and they have to understand the pros and cons, the benefits, the risks. And ultimately, if something happens to you, can somebody else come in and do the job? There's so much to consider because there's a world of people around you. And if you live in a bubble, you're not breaking any laws. If you're like, I don't care about anybody but myself, these home-built NASs are fun projects. But when you're responsible for customers' data, when you're responsible for other people earning a living and everybody's counting on you, Because if you don't do your job or you don't do it well, they all suffer the consequences of what you did. So choose accordingly and set your expectations accordingly. There's no right or wrong answer. There's only appropriate or inappropriate expectation, reasonable or unreasonable. You want to accept responsibility for yourself or for anybody else, and you're voluntarily, knowingly, and willfully putting yourself in that position. I'm not telling you it's a bad idea. It's your choice. Mats Olof joins us and says hello, joining us from Sweden. Welcome in, Mats Olof. I imagine this is probably done. We don't probably finished in seconds, quite frankly. Let me jump back over to our operating system here. And you can see most of these tools, like I've never used this tool before in my life. It's pretty intuitive. And we can get rid of this whole thing here. If you want to hit the trash can, we can delete the scam. Or you can keep it, your choice. And then, there's a cloud synchronization backup software. Again, when we talk about Docker, Docker is more administrative, more professional, more nerdy. Folks like YouTube channels like Network Chuck will get into the weeds on this, which for some people, their eyes will glaze over and they'll walk away in a hypnosis. And other people will just eat it up and say, give me more. We don't do that here because it's already being covered by a number of different YouTube channels, the best of which I think personally is Network Chuck. RSS feeds, again, this is all very, very niche. Jellyfin for home users, typically pirating content. I'm sorry, but that's typically the way it's used. I'm not the police, I'm not enforcement. If that's what you want to do, knock yourself out. You can claim you own your licenses or media. I'm not a lawyer, knock yourself out. I don't use it. None of my clients use it. No professional business that I work for uses Jellyfin. I'm not going to tell you there is no business on the planet. I'm telling you in my experience, there is no call for this in a business environment. But that's also why this is a NAS for home use. And quite frankly, if you're pirating movies for your own home use, who cares? When you're pirating movies and reselling them or charging people to watch them, then that's theft. But regardless, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not law enforcement, but I see this stuff and all I think of is amateurs and wannabes. Oh boy, Jellyfin, you got nothing better to do all day but watch TV? I'm jealous. I wish I could just sit around all day and watch TV. All right, it's just jealousy. We've got SQL and PHP. This is all developer stuff if you want to create your own programs. Portainer is sort of a container management tool for things like Kubernetes and Docker, etc. And again, we get back into administration. A snapshot is a backup tool. It's a form of backup. There's another form of backup. Interestingly, the TNAS PC for Windows is in the App Center here. But this would be downloading the app to your PC, not to your NAS, because if you're already on your NAS, you wouldn't need to find your NAS. So I guess if I hit the download button, that must bring it up to download in my local computer that I'm on, so I can install it on that local PC. That's pretty cool, but again, if I'm already in it, I'm not quite sure why I need that. But maybe for, if the IP address changes in a few months or the next time I log in is a year and a half from now. There's a Photos app that has AI, so you could say, show me pictures of the river, show me pictures of when I was in Michigan, show me pictures that I'm in the photos, and it can do all that on its own without you individually tagging everything. The AI basically artificially tags it. It's pretty incredible how far AI has come. I come from the old school where you put your stuff away in categorized folders, so I never need to say, where is it? Or rely on AI. I have got a file system that works for me, that I can always find what I'm looking for. The only time I can't find what I'm looking for is when I didn't follow my own rules. And so AI is only going to get better. It's probably going to You know, you say, show me pictures of Michigan, it might be some pictures of Ohio in there. But it'll get smarter and smarter, and it will definitely take away a lot of the work if you're searching through hundreds of thousands of photos. It'll certainly minimize that if you're too lazy to organize your photos. So it's encouraging human incompetence and human ignorance when the AI can do it all for you. That's a good thing because it can make you more efficient. It's a bad thing because it makes you less self-reliant, where you're just unable to survive on your own, where you've lost all instinct of survival that every animal on this planet has except for mankind, that continually makes itself dumber through technology. And, you know, maybe it's just an old person's way of looking at things, but the rules of survival, as far as I'm concerned, are basic laws of nature. And I don't think that lacking your instinct of the skill required to survive is ever a good thing. But that's just my personal opinion, just to be clear. Now, there are, as I mentioned, more apps than this. And if you go to the community app section, but if you're looking at all these apps here, this is far fewer than, say, you get from Synology, but they're all mostly niche. So the ones that are the most popular are the most common and therefore the most widely used and needed by the masses, the population. And then there's a few little things for the more technical folks, or, and again, technical people don't make up the majority of computer owners, or for that matter, even NAS owners. On servers, though, it's the other way around. Servers are almost solely owned by technical people and not at all by standard users. What?
Check your email.
Check my email. All right, let me get back over to camera one. Again, if you have any questions for me, we're going to wrap this up here. So, oh, Mark Gaines wants me to check my email too. Maybe it's the same email. Would I recommend this for home? Andy says, would you recommend it? What is it? I've asked you guys, stop using this, that, it. I have several different conversations happening at the same time, so I don't know what your point of reference is. If you're referring to this unit here, no, it is not ideal for home users unless you have a rack at home. Sitting it on a desk, it can't breathe here. But they do make standalone units. We've seen them before where it's just a little shoebox type thing. That's for home users, also for small businesses. But if the small business already has a rack, there's nowhere to put that little box. You have to set it on top of something. If you have a rack, this is a great solution for a home user or a business of any size, quite frankly. But this is the same capabilities as the home NASs, except this is more, this has more power and the ability to upgrade to more power than a home NAS would have. Like 10 gig networking wouldn't be common on a home NAS compared to a business. That doesn't mean businesses need it or use it, but they need it more often than home users do. Home users might want it, a business might need it. So you could save some money by not buying that top of the line bleeding edge technology, which, by the way, big corporates, they go up to like, I don't know, if this is 10 gig, if this is, yeah, this is 10 gig, they go 25, 50, I think even 100 gig per second. But you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment and very expensive electric bills, specialized cabling, the whole thing. There's not much difference other than this package, by the way, between a TerraMaster in the little box and a TerraMaster in a rack. It's basically like saying, should I buy a mini ITX computer or a full tower? The internal components are mostly the same. This is a bit loud if it's just going to be in a home. In a business, no one would even notice it because it'll be in a room locked away with other higher end networking equipment that has higher end cooling requirements. So yes and no. All right, emails. Come on, update. Oh, Mark Gaines sent $64.86. It's always an interesting translation between the pound or other foreign currencies and US dollars. It fluctuates quite a bit. So Mark probably sent an even amount in his local currency. And then when it's converted, it's a weird number, 6486. Thank you, Mark. Thank you as always for your support. We do appreciate that very much. I don't see any comment from you. And it's, you know, our viewers that are members and supporters that make this channel possible. We're not being paid by sponsors. So it's up to you guys what kind of content we cover. TerraMaster did send this to us for free. I noticed that Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To recently did the Ugreen NAS review that we were talking to Ugreen about. They wanted to send us one, but they wouldn't do it unless they could see the video before we showed it to you, and it would require their approval. Nope, we don't work like that. I appreciate that Mike's Unboxing Review and How-To fully transparent and said, yes, they sent it to us for free under the condition that we have to show them this edited video before we're allowed to show it to you. I appreciate that disclosure. But we won't take those deals. So we just use the money that we make from memberships and contributions to just buy one off Amazon. And we should have that next week, and we're going to review it. And told Ugreen, thanks, but no thanks. You don't need to send us one for free. We'll buy it. And by the way, if I don't like it, I'll just send it back to Amazon and get a full refund. I have 30 days free returns. I don't have to deal with a company trying to restrict what I'm allowed to tell you or what they want me to tell you. And, you know, they said, we'll pay you. And no, I cannot be bought. I mean, everybody can be bought for the right amount of money, but they don't have enough money. So, you know, no ding on Mike's unboxing. I appreciate his review. And I also appreciate knowing that that review had to be approved by Ugreen before he could show it to you. And he tells you as much. I wish every content creator was required to do that. And by the way, that doesn't mean Mike wasn't critical of things. It just means that he might have been critical of things that he's not allowed to talk about. Maybe. See, because that's secret. Whatever Ugreen requested him to change, we don't know. Maybe there wasn't any request to change anything. But he also knew that going into it, so maybe he intentionally avoided certain subjects. I don't know, but it doesn't mean his review is not valid or useful. But having that condition is very helpful for me as a viewer to understand the information. Some information may be omitted because of the condition of the review. I don't want to operate under those circumstances. So, and thanks to our members and thanks to your generosities, we don't have to. In this case, TerraMaster sent this to us without those stipulations. And when we criticized everything and, you know, eventually said, look, I'm not giving you 100% of the blame here because I screwed up. So I'm going to do it again. At no point were they defensive. They've always been very helpful. And kudos to TerraMaster. It's a pleasure to work with companies like this. Jim thinks something like this would be overkill for a home user. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to get out of your bubble. Like, it's like you can't even possibly imagine what other home users are doing. I had a customer who was in his 80s who had the most complex PC setup I have ever seen in my life. And I'm like, the last thing I expected. And so when we talk about the average home user, well, the average home user wouldn't have a NAS. So right there, right out of the gate, a lot of times the average home user would benefit from having one if they understood what it was and what it did. But they don't, and ignorance is bliss. They don't know any better. And those who do know better probably have a legitimate reason for having one, which may be more than your imagination can possibly provide. If it wasn't designed for home users, then what are all of these NASs doing? They're just sitting on shelves, not being purchased. So maybe you're referring specifically to a rack-mounted NAS, but if you search for a home lab here on YouTube, you will be inundated with people with home servers. Thousands of videos, thousands. But that's nothing. I don't know. I just think there's a lack of consideration for anybody's needs outside of your own, and I keep seeing it over and over and over again. And I want to shake people and go, look, there's an entire world around you you know nothing about. So to immediately dismiss them and say they all belong in a certain category, I mean, it's your choice, but I think you're disconnected from reality. There's enough that this category exists, enough for there to be QNAP and Synology and TerraMaster and Ugrade. The list goes on and on and on. So nobody's buying these. Or home users aren't buying it? Oh, they're buying them. They're buying enough of them to make them worth producing, or they wouldn't exist outside of businesses. And the fact is, there are also channels that focus on business equipment that no home user ever, quote unquote, needed until it started to become more affordable and the size of it would come down. And users found a reason. They always, if they're interested in tech, you cannot tell them they don't need that. So anyway, we'll agree to disagree. You just see the world differently than me. Over and over again, we keep running into the same thing, where you just think this is how it is. And you're right for you. But I don't think you know too many people outside that don't necessarily, well, when you make friends with people that are like-minded, usually. But when you're hired by a customer, you have no idea what their needs are, what their budget is, what they expect from you. And if you want to stay in business, you have to accommodate whatever that is. And after a while, you'll start seeing patterns evoke from consumers that call you for help and businesses that call you for help. And to immediately think you already know who they are before you've met them or what their needs are, ooh, no, I don't know how you'd keep them in business that way. That is a convenience of thought that only a home user can have. But nobody in business, I can't see that business being sustained by not treating each individual customer or business, if they're the customer, to whatever needs they have. I would not make any assumptions. But, you know, you do you. It's all good. We'll agree to disagree on that. So you're welcome to your opinions, and I'm welcome to disagree. That's all. All right, any final questions that I can address for you guys on this lovely Friday that's boiling hot here in Phoenix? I'm happy to do so. There is a slight delay between when I talk and when you hear me, so I have to kind of pause and wait for the video to catch up. And in the meantime, I think we're done with this and we can shut it off. Now, normally you would not shut off a NAS. They are designed to run 24/7. And the way you shut this off, just to demonstrate in real time, you know, it doesn't instantly turn off. It has to wind down, okay? So if we go over to our desktop again, let me go back over to my window capture. Then the process is simply to click. There's probably numerous ways we can turn this off. There's the dashboard, notifications. We can mute the buzzer if we don't want to hear the beeping when it boots or resets. And probably this gear, I'm going to guess. No? This button, the start button. Yeah, it's the start button. I've already forgotten. So the start button, and then we'll hit the power icon. Are you sure you want to shut it down? Normally you would not shut these down, but I'm going to go ahead and confirm. Now, here's the thing. This whole time, by the way, synchronization has been running. So we go to the control panel, look under storage. We can see in this amount of time how long it's going to take for this to complete the synchronization. It's only 6%. This is going to need to run for 24 hours. When I shut it down, it can't run anymore. And when I turn it back on, it should pick up and continue. Normally, this would not be shut down. This would continue to run, and this will just finish on its own, and we continue to use it regardless, as needed. But since this review is over and I have no use for this, I need to remove the drives to get them ready to use in the upcoming Ugreen NAS test. So I don't care if this finishes synchronizing or not, and I need to clear the desk off because we have more videos to make. So for that reason, I'm in a unique position to shut it off. And if you ever find yourself in that position, that's how you do it. Now, if I switch back over to camera 1, you can watch in real time how long it is before this power light goes out. It does take about 60 to 90 seconds on most NASs. And usually the turn-on process takes longer to boot up. Much the same as a Windows computer. They usually can go through the shutdown process faster than the boot up process. But there it goes. Whatever amount of time that was, it's off now. Everything's nice and quiet. And we're done with the unit. As far as I'm concerned, upon revisiting this for any individual app review, each one of those apps could use its own review if we wanted to go down that rabbit hole. And the same could be said for every other NAS we've looked at. And TerraMaster, you know, their big push on this is a backup server, a business backup server, what they call a BBS. And so they have specifically written, designed, and honed their own specialized backup software that's different from everybody else's. Whereas a lot of the other apps like virtual machines and Kubernetes and Docker, that's all kind of the same, right? And Jellyfin, Plex. So TerraMaster, or a NAS manufacturer, they're not just making the NAS, the hardware. Some do. B-Link has a new little NAS out, but you're on your own for an operating system. You have no choice but to use Unraid or TrueNAS or Open Media Vault, et cetera, lots of options there, and be your own support. Also, it only holds like 6 NVMe drives, so it's not much better off, in my opinion. Just get a USB drive and share it over your network. But there are options, right, to accommodate home users, people that just like to tinker, people that work in an industry, small business, even small business like a real estate agent. It's everything to them. It's critically important. If they can't complete the sale of a house, they'll lose tens of thousands in commission. And so spending a few $100 for a NAS is nothing. So there's very different attitudes amongst all of us. For all those different reasons, there are lots of different variations of options. No differently than a restaurant. We don't all eat the same meal for whatever reason. And you get what you pay for. If you're not paying for anything, then you're on your own, basically. You have no one to complain to and nobody to blame. It's just you. Some people choose that. I don't have that luxury. If I want to stay in business, people pay me. I know, it's bizarre. How does that work? Well, you have a job, you go to work, and you meet expectations and you get paid. What if I don't want to do that? Then you don't get paid. Then how do I pay my bills? I have no idea. If I knew that, probably wouldn't be working. It's funny to me because isn't that obvious? I don't know. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with me this Friday and our discussion. And yeah, I'm going to just say once again to all of the super chat, the generosity there. Where's my list? Thank you again to Samuel Kowalski. Thank you to Morton and Raj D. They just renewed their memberships today. Thank you to Peter for his contributions in super chat. Peter from the Netherlands. Of course, our friend Peter, we call Buster. Although was he in here today? Always good to see Buster, saying hello to him. And JTT, welcome into membership. We're glad to have you here. Thank you to David Graham, and David sent a super chat, and then Gregory Howard also renewed his membership today. And it's these folks that make these videos possible. So for everybody watching for free, it's because of these folks. I want you to know, without them, we have no videos. So thank you to all of them, to those of you who support us, and even the kind conversations that we have in our channel, regardless of being a member or not. Human kindness is free. There's no reason not to just be respectful and kind and thoughtful to other people. And for that matter, you know, as long as people can be kind, everybody's always welcome. But it doesn't change the fact that financially these videos, they don't fall from the sky. And I don't just go in the back room and make stuff just so I can make content. We're buying the stuff. In this case, we bought these drives are $300 a piece. So again, they weren't bestowed upon me by God. I had to go and pay for them. And it's using the money that comes from our members, it comes from the people that support the channel. The money from YouTube, it can maybe fill up a gas tank. It's ridiculously and insultingly low. And if you think I'm exaggerating, create a YouTube channel. Just try it and see if you can live off that income, if you can even get any at all. So I cannot emphasize how important the members are and what role members and contributors play in my ability to bring other viewers free content. All right, and I just want to put it out there, because if that goes away, if the members and support goes away, then so does the content for everybody universally. So I cannot thank them enough, and I hope you guys appreciate them as well. And very generous members like Mark Gaines and Buster Oystein and Frankie B, Charlie Purdy, these guys are so generous that I'm telling you, half of the content you've been watching this year would not exist without the supporters. So it's up to you. If you don't care if this channel goes away, then you won't be heartbroken when it does. And if you do care, but you won't contribute, well, you saw it coming. That's all I have to say. I have no control over it. So I'm relying on the kindness of others, and it's because of their kindness that everybody in the community benefits. Likewise, when people in the community want to be kind and respectful, we all benefit from that kindness and friendship. So it's not just a financial thing. That will wrap it up for me for today. Thanks, of course, to Mara for all of the work she does behind the scenes, doing all of our administrative work, channel thumbnails, video descriptions, and links. Without her, oh boy, I would have less time to make videos. And of course, our friends at SCD Keys. They offer the legitimate legal Windows and Office Microsoft keys. They also sell keys to other software that I don't promote here because I'm not interested. It's not what I do. This is an extension of my real business, and I'm showing you what I really do for a living. It may not tie into what you do at home, okay? It was never intended to. It's intended to educate people for the possibilities, and if they apply to you, great, and if they don't, we try to have a variety of different topics constantly so that we might alienate a certain section of people on NASs, but then we might alienate the people on NASs when we review mini PCs, whatever. It's not tailored to any specific viewer. If you find the content appealing or relatable, that's all it's supposed to do. Some people will find it appealing and relatable, some people won't. That's how it works. And the more variety we have, obviously, then the wider variety of viewers we'll get. But don't expect to see the same content over and over again. We do have to get back to PC building, which has long been a staple of this channel. And I have to finish the cooler install on our Cougar build, and I think I'll do that on Sunday. When I asked our audience yesterday if they would prefer to see the NAS today or the Cougar build, they were 50-50. Half the audience that were there that responded said they wanted to see the Cougar, and I mean exactly the same number said they wanted to see the NAS. So that did not help me make a decision for today's content. So one was going to be done today and the other one done on Sunday. So if you were looking forward to the Cougar build, join us Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'll be back to finish that build up, and hopefully it'll all work great, and then it's just cable management and buttoning it up. It'll be done. So again, I want to say thank you for all of you for hanging out, and I hope I get to see y'all again on Sunday, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. That's going to wrap it up. Until next time, bye for now.